Summon Sign is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 49 of Summon Sign, Last Stand Media's weekly in-depth gaming discussion podcast. I am your host, as always, Brad Ellis. And joining me this week, I got two lovely boys, or men, I would say. First of all, Gene Park, already making one of them laugh. Gene, how are you, my friend?
Good. Busy December. Yep. I will have to dip out later in the episode, and we'll probably have to join in later. So I apologize to everyone for in advance, and to Brad and Rick here for the interruption. But glad to be here. Rick and I just finished a rousing spoiler cast of Veilguard, which was surprisingly well received. Honestly, Rick, what did you say? I was a little surprised at the reception that people were like, yeah, this was fun. You know,
I think the comments that I did receive the most was, we didn't need Mass Effect 2 slander in our Veilguard commentary, which I had comments on. I don't think it was slander. I like Mass Effect 2. It's just not my favorite of the Mass Effect. And then also one thing that I have taken into account and will do my level best at, which is not stepping on Gene and his commentary. So we're back together again, Gene. I'm going to do my best to let everybody have their piece, because I do read the comments on occasion, and I do try to better myself through that. I don't take them all into account because a lot of you have a lot of notes about a lot of things I could do better as a human being and otherwise, but I will try not to step on anybody's commentary today.
No, you know, Rick, you and I both share that criticism because we are both known as the people who constantly interrupt. I think that part of that has to do with both of our personalities and our chosen professions. Lawyers interject all the time. Lawyers often lead the conversation, and you're used to that. For me, I live in the East Coast. I've been more of a Washingtonian and a Washington D.C. journalist than I have anything else at this point. So I think I'm pretty sure I've inherited the traits of like the type A personality that just butts into conversations all the time. Also, a lot of the people mention that I do a lot of active listening, which I actually take into account. That is a criticism. Part of that is because of, again, my background as a journalist. When we do live shows of interviews, we're not doing podcasts where we have to wait for airtime or whatever. We do it live on TV or live on stage. So there would be a lot, journal like Brian Gumbel is the exhibit A of active listening, where he go. I do that a lot, and I recognize that is a habit of mine, but that is formed through 20 years of journalism and interviewing style that I have to kind of train out. So yeah, Rick, you and I both shared the interruption criticism, so I feel you on that one.
Hey, I appreciate it. I never mean any offense by it ever.
No,
and I know people do get on me sometimes for quote unquote blaming the stroke. But I will say that I don't have as great a medium-term memory as I used to. And there is kind of a notion of, I've got a good point to raise here. I don't want to lose it. That I try not to let just drive me through other people's commentary. But if I do, I don't mind being called to account. So thank you, commenters, for that well-reasoned criticism.
I do that too, where I feel like I have a thing that I need to get out, and I know that I'm going to lose it by the time the other person stops talking, and the other person might not stop talking for a while, so I get a little anxious, and I might want to say something. Also, part of it, and I've told this to Micah too, because a lot, on Punching Up, I get that criticism a lot, interrupting Micah all the time, right? It's not because I want to interrupt Micah or I want Micah to stop talking. It's because I'm so excited to talk to Micah that's why I pipe up, because I feel like we're just chattering away, But I recognize that that's not a perfect listening experience for folks at home. So we're trying our best. We're just lawyers and journalists here. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all got little things we could work on. We try to, but it takes time. It doesn't change overnight. But we're aware. All right. Before we get into the show, though, please Check us out on patreon.com/laststandmedia. If you'd like to support us, you can get early access to all of our shows, including this show, Punching Up, our Nintendo podcast, Sacred Symbols, of course, the flagship PlayStation podcast, and Defining Duke, our Xbox podcast. It's stuff like Constellation or just conversation podcasts. We just talk about random stuff. You get Sacred Symbols Plus also, where you get stuff like that Dragon Age Veilguard spoiler cast you guys did. Very interesting. I haven't played the game yet, but if I ever do play it, I'll be sure to listen to it because I am curious what everyone else thinks about it. But yeah, we greatly appreciate all your support. Also, whatever podcast service you're using or whatever, leave us a nice review or thumbs up, whatever you can do if you enjoy the show. We appreciate that as well. All right, a little warm up for us real quick. First of all, for Gene, this is from Jeffrey Carlson. Hi, Summoners. I'll cut to the chase for Gene. Who is your waifu? Also, Hoeg, congrats to the Blue. Big win, Jeff.
Go Blue.
Go Blue. And Gene, who's your waifu?
Should we get into Persona 5 talk now? Sure. We can surely do that.
Yeah, sure. We can just start Persona 5. That's fine.
Yeah, it sounds like a very. I interpret that as a Persona 5 question. I don't have a wife in real life. Been looking for one still. It's why I ended up in Hawaii. I was engaged in the first place. But Persona 5, who is my waifu? First of all, please, this is an old game. This is a game that's 8 years old. So I will talk about spoilers for this game, but I'm not done with it yet, though. So okay. I can't even spoil the ending for you because I actually don't know. And I'm surprised at how little of the story Persona 5 story has been spoiled for me because I am towards the tail end of what I believe is the vanilla game, and there are twists and character turns that I did not see coming. So, still after all these years, Persona 5 is still delighting a hardcore JRPG fan like myself. Now, to the question, cut to the chase. Who's my waifu in this game, in this run? Drumroll, please. It is Makoto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did not expect that Makoto would be my waifu, but the more I talk to An, she's obviously the hottie of the group, right? An Takamaki or Takamaki. She's obviously the cutie. She seems like more like she'd be my friend, Futaba, definitely another friend or like a sister type of person, even though she's obviously, I mean, they're all fucking cute, they're all Atlas characters, so they're all extremely attractive, But Makoto, I find myself liking her because she is like the straight edge student. She's student council president. I'm attracted to power. She does seem like she would be someone who would probably grow up to be like her sister, a prosecutor or a prosecuting attorney. She has that kind of aggressive style to her. She is kind of a goody two shoes. So I surmise that my character will probably just dump her within 2 months time or whatever, which is exactly what I've done, where I have definitely been attracted to a very Japanese girl who is very much a straight edge, good girl who always did her work. And we always studied together. We always we didn't study together, but we always did our work together. We went to coffee shops. So it was we were literally having Persona 5 dates with each other. And then I got her. And then after 2 months, I just broke up with her because I was like, this is not.
Damn.
So it's rough. Which is again why I don't have a waifu, because I shun women like An, and I win over women like Makoto only to turn them away in the end for some reason. But yeah, Makoto is the one for me. It's weird because I'm trying to role play as a high school student, and this will get into my deeper nitpicks and issues with Persona 5, which is that I am not a high school student. So I am very, very far removed from that experience. So it is very awkward for me to say, oh, I love Makoto, the senior student council, or whatever age she is. Versus if I'm really wanting to role play as myself, then I should be going for the adults, which makes the whole other game feel awkward because now you are a 17-year-old, 16-year-old boy trying to date your teacher who's also a maid at part-time. Look, I love Miss Kawakami, Becky. She would probably be my wife if not for the doctor. She's also hot too. But I would have to say that I would probably end up with the teacher if it was me. I have
what
also
I like most about this answer is that they're all Gene's waifu.
They're all
everybody in Persona 5.
They're all possible wives. You know, I'm still getting to know Chihara or the fortune teller girl. I'm only starting her S-Link because she just kind of popped up late for me, which makes this game so fun. So that gets to, well, I love Persona 5. I think it's incredible. This is still my first run that I started way back. Well, this is Persona 5 Royal to be quite clear.
Oh, you're playing Royal, okay.
Yeah. So this is still my first run on the Nintendo Switch that I started like back when the Switch version came out, 2019. And I've been hammering away at this since. Part of it is because I am not a high school student anymore. I don't really relate to these characters or their experience anymore. And it's been an interesting experience to go back to it after Metaphor. And I won't talk much about Metaphor at all. Obviously, we have a spoiler cast for that coming someday. But the reason why Metaphors resonated so strongly with me immediately is because there are other characters that aren't teenagers anymore. You know, Metaphor has a character that is an old man. Metaphor has a character that is a slightly less old man who has a child. Metaphor would have teenagers as well, but even your character is an 18-year-old, like an adult man, young man. At least there's that. All of the experiences, the side stories, or the quote unquote confidant or side story quests in Metaphor are all, because of that, as a result of the age diversity of the cast, the stories end up becoming a little bit more diverse. I fucking hate Ryuji. Ryuji is my least favorite character in Persona 5. I apologize. I don't know if he has a fandom. I apologize if he has like a following. I just think he's really, really fucking annoying. I increase his confidant level because at level 7 you get the insta kill. When you just when you dash into an enemy and you do a cool little ninja animation that kills him, and you don't even get penalized for the experience points. You just get all the experience points, which is crazy. So I beeline, once I found that out, I beeline his confident level, and I've just been ignoring him since. He can fuck off with his track team drama whatsoever. But that's the thing, I don't give a shit about track team drama or Makoto's, like she has her friend that's dating a host boyfriend, which is kind of interesting. That's not bad. But like, again, a lot of these stories have to do with dating or interpersonal relationships, whereas in Metaphor, it's about like, I'm questioning the religion that wanted to sacrifice me or something, or a lot of the stories will kind of feed back into the lore of the world, right? Where you're understanding the religion, you're understanding the different people, because Metaphor inherently is a new world. Persona 5 is just depicting our world. And, I guess, it might explain certain Japanese stuff, like, for example, I flip out every time I see you can buy castella, the bread, a bread item in the game that I grew up eating when I was a kid. I love castella. So the fact that I can give that to Shojiro as a gift to get 3 stars in this relationship, I get super tickled by that. But again, that is very familiar to me, and it might be familiar to a lot of people. And it's just bread. It's just a brand name for bread. Whereas in Metaphor, things are just like, it's just a whole new world, So things are just a little bit more interesting. It's just a little bit more engaging to me, at least in terms of the narrative, right?
Can I ask you something on that, Gene?
Yeah, go
because
for it. Yeah.
I love Metaphor. I also love Persona 5.
Yeah.
You've mentioned it as a positive that Metaphor stays out of some of the more kind of dating level links and tells you more about the world. And I do agree that that's necessary.
I have something to say about that,
but
please go ahead.
Yeah, but do you think that it loses a little bit of something from the character relationships in Metaphor as opposed to something like Persona, because you're not getting into more of those actual character dynamics and staying on a lot more of the world changing religion and race and bigger topics. Because what I haven't seen in gaming, at least talked about a lot right now in quarter 4 2024, is that it does feel like, even though the structure of Metaphor and Persona are so similar, that Metaphor striving for this other world building thing makes it less complicated, less complex in the actual interpersonal dynamics. And I kind of miss that a little bit when I get to Metaphor. And I like that in Persona 5 quite a lot.
Oh, yeah. Hold on, let me just message my boss real quick. Yes, I'm so glad that you brought that up. This is a reason why it's good that Rick interrupts sometime, because he actually was kind of vibing with what I was actually going to go into. I earlier said that I was super happy that Metaphor has no dating mechanics, and I liked the streamlined social link stuff, where anytime you spend time with another sub-story character, every time you spend time with another sub-story character, you end up kind of learning about the world, like you said, right? And the S rank or the S link will level up immediately. It doesn't matter what your answers will be or whatever. So it's a very stress-free kind of leveling requirement, as opposed to Persona, where you actually have to think about what you're answering. And I didn't like that at first, but now that I'm back in Persona 5, I have to say I actually find the confident system a little bit more engaging, to be quite honest.
All right.
Again, I mentioned that I hated Ryuji, but from a gameplay perspective, it incentivized me to prioritize Ryuji, and so that gave me more story, and that makes I can see the replays of Persona 5 being a lot more interesting than Metaphor. Whereas in Metaphor, everything is automatic, so I just get everything automatically. Whereas in Persona 5, I actually have to prioritize different confidants. And if I already got, like, for example, the doctor in Persona 5, her level 7 confident rank is that she will give you a discount on all of her items. And she has some amazing items, especially the ones that will refill SP after every turn. And SP, which is the Atlas Games term for magic points, is hard to come by. You run out of it during your dungeon runs, and a lot of SP healing items are very rare. So to have an accessory that will heal your SP after every battle turn is incredible. So for me, it made my first run, I prioritized Ryuji to level up, and I prioritized the doctor to get the level 7 the level 7 discount so I can afford the accessories. And now I can have my whole team kitted out with SP accessories. So for the next run, I can have all those accessories already, and I can prioritize other confidants. I don't have to flirt with a doctor and have those weird, awkward, underage conversations anymore. I can actually maybe date an actual girl or hang out with my friends or whatever, or find out what Ryuji's fucking story is by the end of it or whatever. I'm not going to see it. But that makes Persona 5's confident. I'm surprised that I thought I'd be annoyed with it again. I'm like, I'm going backwards to the old confidant system. And it turns out I'm actually finding it a lot more engaging and a lot more interesting, and it gives a lot of value to the replay of Persona 5. That's one thing that I'm surprised at how much I like about Persona 5 still. And another thing is, and I love Metaphor. Metaphor is my game of the year. I think Metaphor is better than Persona 5 in almost every aspect except the dungeons. Persona 5 dungeons are clearly better than Metaphor.
They're awesome.
It's incredible how much of a step backwards Metaphor is, because Metaphor, again, is trying to create this fantasy world, but it has a logic to it. It has the logic has to stay true to the fantasy world that they're creating. So there are rules in place where it's like, okay, well, here's a temple, and the temple will follow certain rules. Here's a sewer level, and the sewer level will follow the standard fantasy rules. And then sometimes the dungeons might do something a little different, but they never go balls to the wall crazy like the dungeons and palaces of Persona 5 do, where they can experiment with all kinds of different concepts. And I feel like that the Atlas team and Team Persona really stretch the possibilities space of what these palaces can cover, how the different gameplay, the variety of gameplay in each of these palaces. I'm just finishing the casino one, And that one is, you have to the stop the cheating in the casino. All of these little like story beats within the palace is incredible, and it builds character. It builds a character that we're attacking, but it also builds a lot more character moments in between, and also has all these cool heist-like moments that really feed into the overall theme of the fandom theme. So really, I'm just overall really, really surprised at how well Persona 5 holds up. Clearly, I can understand why people consider this their favorite game of all time, or their favorite JRPG of all time. The bar they set for Persona 5 is incredibly, incredibly high. Really, I think the only hang up is I think the story is okay, but it's actually getting better now. Again, I'm heading towards the end, and I think a lot of people really, really, every single person always tells me, "Oh, you gotta beat Persona 5 though. You gotta see to the end because it gets incredible at the end." And that's where I'm kind of building up towards. It's kind of like, again, like a Dragon Age Veilguard kind of thing, where I have this expectation set. But now that the story is kind of ramping up and the plot details are really starting to form together, and all these different narrative threads are really starting to tie together, I'm starting to see the vision. It's really, really exciting stuff, and I can't wait. It's been a huge distraction for me when I should be playing other games for work.
Don't you hate that feeling? Like, oh, I'm really enjoying myself with this older game, and in order to have conversations, I should be playing these newer games.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to break the Indiana Jones embargo right here, right now on Summon Sign. I'm going to break it right now.
Just
my Indiana Jones review is Persona 5 is a great game.
I see.
Hey, I wouldn't get in trouble.
There you go.
Gene, I want to kind of go back.
I'm not saying anything about Indiana Jones. I'm playing it too. I can say that I'm playing it too. But unfortunately, Persona 5 has been a distraction for me. But I do need to lock in and play more indie. So there's that.
Gene, I want to go back to what you're saying about these kind of like relationships you're having with these characters and how you have to pay more attention to them, I should say. You have to think about what you're actually selecting. One thing I notice about a lot of people with Persona 5 is I'm with you on the side of the camp. I like the stakes in that and like choosing the right things. I think that's really more immersive to me. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to miss something in my playthrough. So I think with like they've streamlined it in metaphors so people could see everything in the first playthrough. Like I maxed out every confidant and metaphor, and I didn't use a guide or anything. I was doing everything completely blind, and it's so much easier than past games. And I understand why they did that, and it makes total sense to me, but I kind of wish it felt more like to me that I was making hard choices about who to spend time with eventually. You got that feeling earlier on where I was like, oh man, I really got to think about it. Then you're just kind of like, oh, this goes pretty fast. I can just kind of pick whatever. I'll have plenty of time, kind of thing like that. Do you think they did that metaphor just because people maybe complained about it in the past or something like that, or they just want to make sure people saw everything of the story?
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with this developer anxiety of creating things that people will just miss completely, right? That sounds like a valid complaint from people, and I get that obviously because that is also how I felt too before I was able to kind of compare Metaphor and Persona 5 together. Where I play Metaphor, I was like, oh, I can't even miss anything. This is perfect. I love this. This is a perfect Atlas game. That's what I thought mistakenly, and then I realized, like you said, for other people that's a complaint. Oh, it's missable. I will never see the end of Ryuji's quest line, for example, right? Because I'm not prioritizing it at all. And the fortune teller came in so late that I highly doubt that I'm able to finish her at all too. So I'm looking at all my confidant ranks and my first virgin run, no guide run of Persona 5, and a lot of it's kind of wrecked and fucked up right now. I love that, actually. Mm-hmm. I think the chaos of that is interesting. It makes the game more interesting again to replay or to play even for the first time. I love when games have things that are missable. Again, I understand why developers hate that because you spend all the time working on that, and players complaining about missable things sounds like an addressable complaint. It sounds like they did it. I think it's a good experiment that they tried that to kind of help us feel this way, where it's like, oh, maybe we did miss the confidence after all, because I certainly didn't think that at all until I played Metaphor, and then I realized, oh, I actually missed that system. Actually,
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a fault of Metaphors, really. I think they obviously did that intentionally, and it's satisfying to see all the level 8 confidant ranks in social links by the end of Metaphor. But yeah, you're right. I didn't even try to do that at all. I just had so much time, and by the end of the game, I was just like, everyone is just ranked up. I did it. I beat the social system.
Yeah, it's so easy to max out every stat.
It doesn't feel satisfying. Whereas like when I max out the doctor, I was like, I finally fucking got the discount. I finally fucking got the discount, and it gave me this intrinsic and extrinsic reward system. And it was something that I had to work for, and I had something I had to fret over, and then so the reward for that felt more satisfying as a result. So yeah, honestly, the Persona 5 confidant system, or the original confidant system, I have to say I kind of like it better, honestly.
Hoeg, how do you feel about missable stuff like that in games? Do you prefer how kind of, I guess, Metaphor would do it, where I guess you technically could miss stuff, but it's much easier to do it opposed to Persona 5, where it feels like you have to make more harsh choices?
This is one of those areas where I really do think the designers get their money's worth, right? This is what I pay game designers to do. You might have heard me say that on the Bitcast before, but like, I don't want to be in the business of figuring out exactly where that fun line is between hidden and impossible to discover without a guide, right? Like, I never want to live in a place where I have to consult the wiki, or that I have to find a guide to get X, Y, or Z. And I think on that score, what I remember being a real problem was, like, there's some weapon in Final Fantasy 12, like the Zodiac something, that you just have to do a bunch of ridiculous things.
The chest, you can't open. Yeah, you can't.
And I never want that. I never want, you have to be reading our mind, and you have to be looking at a Wikipedia or a guide or whatever.
I remember the water sword, Tidus's water sword in FF10 was difficult too.
Yeah, but on the other hand, like, I love finding the Ultima eggs in earlier Final Fantasy and figuring out ways to break the systems. And I do like things that are feeling like you have somehow found something hidden that not everybody's going to see in a video game, whether that's the end of a social link story or something else. I like that. I like that to be present. I just don't want it to get to the place where you're puzzle solving when you didn't even know there was a puzzle, and you probably have to have a guide next to you to even engage with it.
Right. Well, I guess let's compare ourselves to like Colin or whatever. Colin, he's going to play Persona. He's playing Metaphor. He has a guide, a strict guide telling him do this on this day and that kind of stuff. Is that kind of like what you like to do with these types of games, where there is missable stuff? Like, if you use the guide, you can maybe technically see everything.
It's so funny that Colin is doing it for the one Atlas game that doesn't require that at all. Like, I mean, I get that he's going for the platinum, so that's fair. Like,
you have to go through.
It requires a little bit more than just flying through the game. But
anyways.
Yeah, and I'm not motivated by the platinums usually. I only ever get them if I hit credits on a game and I see there's like 2 things that look to be pretty easy, I'll go finish one off. But it's not the thing that drives me. And so no, it sounds like a horrible gaming experience for me to be engaged with an RPG and trying to play this game, and otherwise be looking at, okay, no, now I have to go into the Northwest office and say yes to the second option.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to do that. That's not gaming for me.
Yeah, they made Metaphor for people like Colin, to satisfy him, and I get that. But we are definitely not Colin. I think Rick and I both enjoy just kind of flying by the seat of our pants and just kind of just dealing with the consequences of our decisions, which is fun. It's interesting, and again, it really incentivizes me to replay Persona 5. I kind of don't want to play Metaphor again, I loved it, and I'll be ready to play it again. But I as soon as I beat it, it wasn't one of those. Let me start a new file, which you get for a lot of games, right? But I remember when I beat Elden Ring, and I was like, I'm done with that game. And when I beat Metaphor again, like, that's how I also felt. Where it's like, okay, I think I could take some time off. Whereas like with Persona 5. I'm already thinking about my second run, even though I'm still in the vanilla game, which is fascinating to me. So I feel like I would just replay Persona a lot more. So I think I like Persona better as a game overall, you know?
I think thematically, I know people complain about the high school antics of the Persona series, but I think thematically, high school and even college to some extent is a good environment for storytelling and gameplay. I mean, they're like these little independent societies that can have all these little niches and things to explore in a way that you don't necessarily see even in a fantasy world. If I have any complaints about Metaphor, it's that I have played a lot of video games in fantasy worlds, right? And I like Metaphor's world. I feel really excited about the fact that this is built from the ground up by Atlas, and I've enjoyed getting to know it. But I also do like engaging with high school dynamics that I recognize from my life, of course, not a Japanese student, but similar to my life. And I think that there are a lot of things that you can explore with that kind of familiarity that you have to lose world building and telling you a story about these 8 different races and religions and world and all that. And I think I gravitate towards that with a game like Persona. I also play games like, I'm in the middle right now, speaking of late to the party, of a run through of Lost Judgment, the second in the spin-off series featuring our wonderful lawyer turned detective in high school. And so it does defeat some of the things you pointed out, Gene, which is there are a little bit of uncomfortable scenes being an actual high school student in that environment and some of the engagement you have with other characters. In Lost Judgment, for those of you that don't know, you are an old detective. I think you're probably in your 30s in that game.
He's in his 40s. He's our age.
He doesn't act like it. I can't pull off the leather jacket and skateboard. But people ask me about the Judgment series all the time because I'm a lawyer. Yagami is barely a lawyer in that series, but he is an older man in high school. So you do have these weird plot lines with engaging with the dance club and the basketball club and all these various things, beating up teenagers. But it does feel a little bit more, I would say, normal insofar as you aren't asking yourself to displace into a teenager's kind of perception of the world. You're still this kind of old man and engaging with these crazy teenagers that are bullying people. And so I do recommend that game. It was one that I almost brought up as part of this show. But I think it's good as a counterpoint to Persona because you are that outsider in the high school environment. But high school is still a very interesting place to be.
You're right that high school is a good template for storytelling and structure, obviously, right? I think, it's just really my issue with high school. I fucking hated high school, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I had no girls in my school either. So, you know, this experience is not only alienating and unfamiliar, but also upsetting. So, you know, you would think like, oh yeah, I get to relive my high school days, but with girls around, you know. But it's like, you know, it just all feels a little strange, and that, you know, and Persona 5 is not my first Persona game. First of all, like a lot of people think that I've never played any of the Mega 10 games, which is close to the truth. But I played Persona 4. Persona 4 is my first one, and I loved that one. I thought it was everything that you all think Persona 5 is right now, right?
Well, I mean, this series really only started, right? The modern Personas with 3. Like
with 3, 4, and 5. Yeah,
prior
exactly.
to 3, it didn't have the calendar and everything else that we recognize.
Exactly.
As
and the 4 kind of broke through on the PS2 and in the PSP, and then 5 was obviously the breakout, you know, global hit.
I love 5.
You know, I really enjoyed 4, but I was closer, you know, 4. I played 4 when I was like 32. So, you know, I'm 10 years gone from just over to 14 years gone from high school. So it was a little bit more relatable. I'm somewhat young, but now that I'm 43 or even past 35, when Persona 5 came out, it was a little hard for me to really take seriously at the beginning because when you talk about adults, they refer to adults as adults, and so it feels like I'm almost playing like a Charlie Brown game, kind of, you know, in some sense. But that's really like my personal only nitpick with Persona 5. Honestly, I am thoroughly enjoying the game. Wow, I totally see it as one of the seminal JRPGs of all time, easily.
I love Persona 5. I really like Metaphor too. I bounced off it a little bit more than I did or Persona or that I expected to. You
know, weirdly, I think the Persona 5 soundtrack is much better than Metaphor's. It's a lot more stylistic and easier to listen to, like out of the game experience.
It is.
I actually find the Metaphor score pleasing to hear on repeat for 80 hours straight. I am tired of hearing Beneath the Mask for after 60 hours, especially since you hear it so often in YouTube videos and like Twitch streams and everything like that. Like, obviously, I'm playing this game 8 years later, but Metaphor's music definitely sounds it kind of loops better, Whereas because there's not as much vocals, whereas Persona 5 is trying to be a jazz track or a pop track that loops, and that always feels kind of like awkward and a little bit exhausting. But I mean, the music is still the best. I do like it overall better than the Metaphor's soundtrack for sure too. So
Gene,
it's been interesting to go back to Persona 5 after Metaphor and find out that the game's still really good. Yeah.
Yes, it is really good. Gene, give me your favorite confidant in 5 right now.
It's Kawakami. because the funny thing though is that I have lived the experience of being a high school teen being groomed by older women, unfortunately. And it is a very strange experience, and to live it again, it feels weird and also true, in Persona 5. And then a teacher having not really a sex trade at the side, but like, something sexier on the side is kind of interesting. I'm not going to romance her though. I'm not going to do that. It's Makoto all the way through. So, Futaba's S-Link is pretty interesting too. I'm waiting to see how that turns out too. So,
Makoto's also who I chose for the relationship, Gene. So
interesting.
Good taste.
Yeah, I like her character design. I like her. Yeah. I like her queen outfit too. All the outfits are great. I did not see. I guess I won't spoil it, but I did not see the last teammate coming. The character is there throughout the whole story, and I was like, oh, this is probably the last boss or something. And then they join, and I'm just like, I'm so shocked that this was never spoiled to me the entire time.
That's good. Yeah.
It's amazing. So I feel lucky and fortunate that I'm having a really good run through this, and it's relatively unspoiled. So
good.
I really like that you played Metaphor and Persona 5 right next to each other, because I think a lot of what I'm saying even now is based on memories of years ago playing through Persona 5. So I think it's useful to have that immediate kind of experience next to each other.
That's exactly what I wanted to do, because I wanted to compare the two games, and I'm surprised to find out. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised to find out that I'm finding Persona 5 kind of better in some ways, even in that regard. So it's like, yeah, Persona 5 was a really hard act to follow, and I think that kind of again underscores the triumph of Metaphor, that it did do so many different things differently. It did introduce way different characters. It was a fairly different experience that I think you can take away. But if you love Atlas games, both of these games are definitely Atlas games, and they both have a calendar system, but they both have a unique, different flavor that I think caters to different sides of me, really. So,
Hoeg,
yeah.
If you romance anyone in Persona 5, let us know who, and favorite confidant in 5.
I'm trying to think if I did romance someone in my run. I'm a simple man, so I think I went with On. If I recall correctly, she's got a cat outfit very early. What are you going to do?
Panther, yeah. I mean, she's in a bikini for like 30% of the game, so you like it's hard to resist. My
recollection was feeling conflicted about it, because her first story beat is that she is being objectified by the men in her life. But that's what I remember. I'm not sure if I went that direction or not. It was years ago, but that's what I remember.
Favorite confidant, though, that's not like someone you didn't date in the game, I guess. Who's your favorite social link in it?
I have to be a troll here. I think Ryuji.
Oh, okay.
I think every Atlas game has a Ryuji.
They do. They all do.
I think most kind of anime-facing games have a Ryuji character, which is one that I tend to like.
The Yusuke's, the Junpei's,
the Yusuke's, I don't like these characters.
That's fair. That's fair.
It is a common archetype: the buddy who's a little bit louder and brasher and a little bit more outgoing, and kind of is like the stand-in for the more muted protagonist or whatever. And Stroll does that too, but I actually think Stroll is
much more tame.
I think Stroll is the best version of this because he's not like it's like also like the pervy stuff in Persona 5 hasn't really aged all that well. It's kind of it's pretty cringy. So
it was uncomfortable at the time. So I can only imagine it's a little bit more uncomfortable now.
Yeah, it's a little bit more uncomfortable now for sure. It's just like
Shout out to Sojiro, my man. Making that coffee, so good to have for those palace runs.
Sojiro is a great character.
I love Sojiro.
He's so much in the background for so much of it, and then he comes forward and ties into the story in a much deeper way than I expected. Yeah. Again, like all this shit that I didn't really see coming, or that wasn't spoiled for me, and I'm just like pleasantly surprised, like, oh my god, I'm still, this game is still surprising me. It must feel like what it feels like when like someone goes back to an old JRPG that I played, like for example an old Final Fantasy, and be like, oh my god, this is still great. That's kind of
I've seen that with people playing Tactics. When they get to Tactics, you're like,
oh yeah,
wow. Yep, Tactics goes places, people. But I mean, there is something to be said for the Atlas approach of 10,000 plot points, right? It's hard to actually get spoiled on everything in one of these games because there's a million things happening.
That's true. There are so many different things happening, and a lot of it has to do with the build up towards this too, which is satisfying too. So yeah, I don't know. I really can't say enough good things about Persona 5. You all are right. This is a great game. I don't know if I like it better than Persona 4. I think obviously the game is much better than Persona 4. The dungeons are just if they're better than Persona 4, they blow Persona 4's away. I still like the cast and the overall premise of like the Scooby-Doo murder mystery of Persona 4, but because I think the Phantom Thieves storyline is more ambitious and isn't handled as well, but it's getting good again though. That's the thing. Like towards the middle, I wasn't really like the painter palace. I wasn't really that excited for that one. I was just like, whatever.
I loved that palace. It was cool. Yeah,
it's a good palace. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's not a weak one, but this one was like I'm less fired up about this one as I would be for example, like Futaba's or the later game ones. But yeah, it definitely felt like a second level thing. The second level of Metaphor, I think, is just incredible, by comparison, right? So with Joanna and her plight and everything, I just thought that and Heisme and everything too, that was incredible. But any negative things I could say about Persona 5 are like pure tiny nitpicks. The game is a gargantuan title, and it's just great. And I'm excited to play it again.
Yeah. All right, boys, we got a write-in from Roku here. Hey, Summoners, I have a question for Gene on his experience with Persona 5 and how it compares to other Atlas titles he's played. I know Gene has been on and off with Persona 5 for a while. To what extent do you believe the setting, cast, and aesthetic determine how much you like these long-ass games? Over the years, I feel that the criticism Persona 5 gets of it having too much dialogue, not vibing with the characters, and having a blunt story falls flat for me, as I feel that it applies to pretty much any modern Persona game. I think it really just depends on how much you vibe with the factors I listed above, highlighting how important these factors are, especially in games as long as this. Metaphor is my goatee because of its compelling and inspiring narrative, but I'm a bit surprised at its glowing reception, as I feel that it has a few flaws that I don't hear much about. One I feel is that the dungeon design is a step back from Persona 5, and I also feel that it has the opposite problem of Persona 5, which was bloated in content, while Metaphor in its later half is a little lacking in main story content. I love both games. I just feel that there's a distorted perception with Persona 5 when the criticism it garners can apply to pretty much any modern Persona game. Meanwhile, Persona 5 is not receiving enough praise for the things it does right. Kind of ironic considering the game's themes. Hoeg and Brad, feel free to jump in. I love to hear your thoughts on this too. Brad, I've really enjoyed the show this past year. It feels like you've been here forever. It's just dope seeing people talk about playing video games, which is the most important thing.
Dope.
Well, Roku, me and Gene complained about the dungeon design day one. in Metaphor. First time we talked about this,
we did, didn't we? Yeah,
I complained about it, and you were like, "Yeah,
serviceable." You know,
I said it was a step back from Persona 5, and I was disappointed in that. And it is throughout the whole game.
You're right, totally.
They do some cool things.
Agree with you.
Yeah, they do some things to switch it up every now and then, but it was not as much as I was hoping for. I guess that's what Metaphor was for me. Is love it, amazing game. It's one of my favorite games of the year easily. But there's just things I wish they kind of went further and bigger with, where I was just like, it kind of feels held back in some ways. But still incredible. But I think also what you're saying here, Roku, Persona 5 not getting enough like praise. I think that game has gotten plenty of praise. I think everyone universally pretty much loves that game. I think it's a very highly regarded game. And when people are arguing about favorite personas, it comes down to things usually like what Gene was saying earlier with vibing with the cast. Like also you said, Roku, I don't think Persona 5 is getting done dirty in any way. No. I think Persona 5 is doing just fine and getting plenty of respect. So I wouldn't really worry about that.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought I'd be like one of those people, you know, like a shithead, and just say, "Oh, Persona 5 is overrated. It's a good game, but you know, people love it too much or whatever." And as I'm playing it more, I'm like, "No, I think actually it deserves all the flowers that it got." And I don't. And the reason why my instinct was to call it overrated is because people are praising it to high heavens for years and years and years. Again, I mentioned the YouTuber Never Knows Best. He just did a JRPG history. And, you know, there are certain big games that he marks within the timeline, which is, of course, Dragon Quest 1. And then you got your Final Fantasy, and then you got your Final Fantasy 7, which is the next marker. And then the next marker after that, which is, you know, like Final Fantasy 13, kind of like marking like the trouble period of JRPGs. The full return to form for JRPGs is marked by Persona 5, and the success that it has, and the success that it showed to other people. That turn-based battles are amazing, which you know, kind of fueled that whole debate about whether Final Fantasy should ever return to turn-based, because. Yes. Look at how engaging and fun the Persona fights are. You know, like the Metaphor fights are really engaging and fun too. And I'm playing the Persona 5 battles, and they're just about as fun. The UI is just as great back then as it was in Metaphor. Really, the one thing I love about Metaphor over Persona 5 is the action combat. I love that the overall gives you a 3-hit combo, and you can just roll out of the way like you're playing fucking Elden Ring and just actually play an action game. I love that, and that's what pushes Metaphor over the top for me as such a great game and its own game, because it just has that unique combat system. But Persona 5 still has that insta-kill, and that's always still fun to do, you know. And pulling off the mask and sneaking around kind of always fun. It never stops getting boring. It always feels mechanically awesome to press A and rip that mask off and then enter into a beautiful turn-based battle. So yeah, I don't know. Persona 5 still holds up to me.
Well, and Persona 5 is marked as a heist game, right? Like it is focused on, we're going to do heists. And I know we haven't talked about my game yet, but we will learn soon how I feel about heist games. But I very much agree with the overall premise of this comment, which is that how you feel about Persona 3, 4, 5, Metaphor, really any RPG, because it's so focused on character and story, it really is going to matter how much you vibe with what its setting is, what those characters are. And Persona 5 is the epitome of cool to me, right? It's got all the jazz, it's got all the pop. It's a heist game. Metaphor is doing something very, very different than Persona. And Persona 5 meets me a little bit closer to where I like to live in my RPGs. I'm not a Japanese high school student, as Gene correctly points out, but I enjoy being there and dealing with those issues a little bit more than the much broader, grander fantasy issues of Metaphor, which is why I think it's bounced off me a little bit, even though I fully recognize and respect how good Metaphor is and what it's trying to do. I don't know whether I will get to the end of that game anytime soon. Probably not before the end of the year in terms of a game of the year type of vote for me. But I am enjoying it. It just kind of keeps me out a little bit. No, I'm not remotely done with Metaphor. I am in the second, they don't call them palaces, but I'm in the second palace. in Metaphor. I just got Heisme. So like I'm early days yet as far as Atlas games go.
Yeah, Heisme is an awesome character.
Yeah,
he is an awesome character. I mean, that's a heck of a voice. That voice actor is
he rules,
so
man.
Yeah, so
that is a good voice. And he's also the voice actor of one of the doctors in Alan Wake 2 The Lake House, actually. You can see his real face act in that game. He's very French. So
fair enough. Yeah. He does not come across that way as Heisme. So no, I enjoy Metaphor. I really do. And I love Final Fantasy. I might be a little bit over fantasied in my video games. And so Metaphor actually was not as engaging immediately as I thought it would be for me. I actually feel like being in a high school setting in Lost Judgment or Persona 5 or wherever you find yourself in that setting is still a unique one for me. Like I still want to explore more of those areas in video games because I think that that's fun. But that's going to be your mileage may vary, reasonable minds can differ score till the end of time. Yeah. Obviously, fantasy and science fiction as genres are more popular than day in the life high school kind of RPGs or other stories. So I would expect it to be perhaps more well received by more people as a concept in Metaphor than something like Persona. But obviously the Persona series has had a long time to kind of gather momentum and gain street cred, if you will. So I think that the premise is correct. I think I lean towards high school shenanigans, even though I love Final Fantasy. But I will be making another return trip through Metaphor in the coming days. I have just Black Friday sales, throw all of my gameplay schedules off because I hadn't played through Lost Judgment because it was right during the generational transition and I didn't want to play the older copy of Lost Judgment, and it was on sale on PlayStation 5 this week. And I said, okay, now's a good time to jump in.
For the 30th anniversary. I actually have it, but I would have bought it again because I finished Lost Judgment, but I've been thinking about replaying that game again too.
I'm loving it.
It's a fucking fun ass game.
It's good.
Also, the reader wrote in about how Persona is written on the nose, and so is Metaphor. But Persona 5 is very much written on the nose. Oh my god! I just got to like the politics phase of the story, and then like the crowd banter regarding politics is so like basic and on the nose. I've never heard a politician hear like this before. I am suddenly interested in voting again. Like that is like the quality of banter within Persona, and you're going to find out a lot in Metaphor too, because there was a whole Reddit thread where I called Metaphor the smartest game of the year, and they were absolutely triggered by the fact that I called it smart, because they're like, it can't be smart because all of the themes aren't subtle enough. And it's like, dude, there's no rule in writing that says subtlety is the best, the highest form of writing. There is none of that.
I find
there's a lot of stories that are very, very like overtly like on the nose and are fantastic.
Yeah.
I find Metaphor's setup the best more than like any given conversation. I agree that Atlas tends to, I will say, write a lot. I think that would be characterized by many as overwrite plot points and things. Like you have all those meals, you have all those conversations in dungeon where people are constantly going over what everybody's motivation is, what we're doing right now, what we're going to do in the future, why we're doing it, that kind of thing, which I think can rub some people the wrong way. Ains, who is my co-host on the Bitcast, often mentions that when I talk about Metaphor or Atlas games or JRPGs in general. They just don't vibe for him because he thinks they overwrite their plot points. And I can't disagree that Atlas puts a lot of volume in the amount of words it spends telling you what's going on.
I am finding that in Persona 5 too, as well.
I tend to like that. Their approach is, here are all these characters, and they're all going to have a different perspective on what's happening right now. And so we're gonna have 4 conversations that are going to go over everybody's perspective. So you really have a very complete notion of what's happening. But I can see how that can rub people the wrong way sometimes.
It's a challenge in how to write a video game, and they do tend to just like, you're right, that they overwrite. I'm going, you finish an S-Link, you finish a date in Persona 5, just hanging out with fucking Maruki, and then you go home and he's fucking calling you on a cell phone to continue the conversation. Every S-Link always is almost usually followed up with a fucking phone call right before you walk home. So it's like you can't even get rid of these people because they can't stop yapping. They just keep talking. You go on these fucking Ryuji with his track team. You're just going on all these little dates and everything like that. That goes into like why I find Persona 5 maybe not as quite as engaging, because I find it less interesting to go to a coffee shop that's really cute versus meditate on the side of a mountain and espouse the values of life or whatever like that, which you do in metaphor. But again, that is going back to what the reader said, which is it's very much a tasting, which is like I do vibe with the fantasy vibe, or I'm just more in the mood for a fantasy vibe Atlas game today than I would be a high school game. But the high school game is still extremely high quality. I'm loving it, so don't get me wrong there.
I think mood is an important sentiment there, right? I'm treating it as different people will have these different feelings, but it's certainly that every human being feels differently sometimes. Sometimes you go to the PlayStation or the Xbox and you say, yeah, I want to dive into politics and racism and figure out how this fantasy world is going to advance through its somewhat tumultuous election season. Or no, that's too much for me right now. I had described earlier playthroughs of Metaphor as requiring a lot out of me, brain-wise, like in terms of thinking through all the battles, thinking through all the weaknesses. That system is a little bit trickier than beating up people or something else that you might be able to do in your video game time. And so, I think moods may vary as much as different people may vary on what you feel like playing that moment.
Yeah, I can easily see myself in a couple months, and I've been there before, where I'm just like, you know what, I'm just not in the mood for a fantasy story right now. I've been there before too, the same mindset as you, Rick, where I'm just like, I don't know about the fantasy and dragons and magic right now. It's just that I just happen to be in a mood where I'm a little bit more open to it, or I was like, Metaphor is doing something a little interesting. But I totally get it. I'm sure in a couple of years or whatever, or maybe next year, or maybe after I finish Persona 5, I'm like, I want to do the high school shit again. Hell yeah. So
that's like me with Yakuza. It's like, I don't know if I'm in the mood for this right now. It's
exactly.
Great. It's
Yakuza
so good.
is my favorite series in the world, and it's like I'm just not in the mood to play fucking Yakuza all over again.
Yeah.
And then other times it's like, no, I need Yakuza right now.
Yeah.
So that's just. But yeah, Sega Yakuza and Persona games are kind of like that, though.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think with the Yakuza, there's just like 500,000 games or something like that, and you throw in the Judgments, which I've played all of also, so maybe I've just played too many. I don't know.
Yeah,
but they're all great.
All 20 of them. So.
They're all really good games. So
yeah, it's one of the reasons I love Infinite Wealth is they do a lot of paying off of all those nostalgic memories in that game, and so it really does work for me on a kind of Avengers, Infinity War kind of feel, or Endgame.
Yeah, I guess. Side tangent is I do like that at the same time, but also Yakuza feels like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where I just feel like it's never going to end and it's just going to keep going. How many times are you going to bring Kiryu back? It's just like, I don't know, man. I haven't finished it well, so I can't say yet, but I thought 6 was going to be the end of Kiryu, and it's just like, no, he's still going. It's like, okay, I guess.
The problem with Yakuza games is they write every game like it's Kiryu's last game. Like I remember finishing Yakuza 4 or Yakuza 3, and I'm like, oh, this is it for Kiryu. And then Yakuza 4, like he's not like the first main character you play. So I'm like, oh, they're totally phasing Kiryu out. And then he comes back in 5 as like the main lead character, and then 6 is just like he's just the main character.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know, Kiryu's the best, so it's like. If I gotta play as Kiryu again, okay, I guess he's like one of the greatest characters ever. So I don't know.
I love
it's such a stark contrast to like how Halo has handled like Master Chief, which is like not well at all.
No.
Versus Kiryu, which is like, oh, Kiryu's back, and then like every time he comes back, we're just like, oh fuck, he's so fucking cool though. You know? It never stops. Like the fandom of him never stops. Like he came back in 7, and he had the coolest fucking scene in the entire game. Like 2 of them, like they're like two of the. He owned 2 of the coolest scenes in the game, which is ridiculous,
He earned him a side game. Yeah, the game a side game. Yeah, he just steals
and in the side game, and we get his most emotional moment like ever, like to the point where I was bawling and crying. So it's like, holy shit, man! The level of respect that Kiryu has compared to like any other video game character, basically ever. Even including like Solid Snake is just ridiculous. It's just miles and miles ahead,
But you're right about mood, right? You're right about feeling like playing that, because I love the Yakuza series. I love RGG. I love basically everything they've done, but their writing style is so melodramatic. It's almost soap opera.
It is soap opera. Yeah,
you have to be feeling that. You have to say, yes, I want to dive into that right now. And I usually do, but not always.
Yeah, Yakuza the series where they look up in the rain and they're like, it's raining or it's not raining or whatever, like it's that kind of melodrama. It's very anime, very very soap opera drama,
Yeah, well, I think just with Yakuza, there's just so frequent how often they come out. I think also, where I never feel like I get a time to just rest and really enjoy it being gone. It's just like, no, here's like 3 games within a year period or something like that. It's insane.
Right, we got Pirates in Hawaii.
Exactly.
And
it looks awesome. It looks great. It was just like, give me a break for. Just don't release a game for a year or something.
Stop being so fucking awesome, Jesus! You come out with another awesome game.
Yeah, but like outside of loving the games themselves, like the businessman in me loves that they've been able to figure out how to efficiently craft these worlds and say, we're going to put 2 or 3 games in here because that's the best way for us to use our resources. And we're gonna make them different stories, but in the same locations, because it's silly to make a brand new world every time. Like, I like their approach to making games, and I think there's a number of developers that could maybe lean a little bit more in that direction and learn something from RGG on that score. Yeah,
they're the king of reusing assets, 100%, and I think it's smart. Yeah, they should totally do that.
Yeah, I had the interview with the director where he was like, "I don't understand other game studios, I don't know why they have to remake the whole world. Every Grand Theft Auto is practically a whole new game, Why don't you
because it's in new cities, I guess, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, and it's like, why don't you just tell the same story in the same city?
I guess, yeah. I think people would be disappointed with Grand Theft Auto if it went that route.
I think would they if we never left Liberty City at all?
I think so. Yeah, I think you can do a game and expansions, but for Grand Theft Auto always being somewhere new, I guess, or a new version of something for every new game, I can see people being a little burned. Like,
the issue is that like we went to new towns like immediately. Like Vice City came out like a fucking year after Play 3, So it's like we didn't even have time to breathe in terms of like what this franchise looks like. They were already ready with it,
Like, well, again, from the business perspective, I think it's totally fine for the next numbered entry in Grand Theft Auto to be in a brand new location or region or what have you. But it might be wiser for a company to say, we're going to do a different character with a different story in this world that we've already built up, that's photorealistic, that we've spent all this time doing.
And that's what GTA Online was anyways, so yeah.
Not tell people that this is it. We're never going to go anywhere else new. We're working on that as well. But to have side stories, different stories, the judgments of the GTA world in places that you already recognize, right? Judgment exists in Yakuza assets. Those games are built on Yakuza towns. So I think it would make sense for Rockstar, because I don't think it makes sense to sell the company or bet the company every single time on one of these. Obviously, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a massive success, but 12 years, however many years it's been since Grand Theft Auto 5, is probably not the most economical, most profitable way to run your company at low risk. So I think RGG's got the better end of that.
I think Rockstar has their cake and eat it too, because they do get those new big leaps from like 5 to 6, but they've been doing GTA Online for so long, and that makes so much money.
Yeah.
So they are doing it at the same time. They're doing both things at once, but they are an insane entity that can do it. Not everyone can get away with that. But yeah, I don't blame RGG for doing what they do. I think it's smart business wise as well. Okay, let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws now. So this came out in September. We've all played it, but there was a patch that came with this month that addressed a bunch of things and changed quite a few things fundamentally about the game.
Yeah, it's almost a Cyberpunk 2.0 situation in terms of revisioning the game.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about this one on a couple of different axes here. One, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, especially pre-Disney Star Wars, but even post-Disney Star Wars, I enjoy Star Wars at an unhealthy level. I've gone to celebrations. My wife was in a newspaper for dressing as Padme Amidala. Like, this is our family thing. And so I was really excited about this game. This was pronounced by Ubisoft as the first open world Star Wars, which I have some objections to because I really like the Lego Skywalker saga and things that I consider open world. But I knew what they meant, right? They meant the first AAA kind of open world Star Wars game. And I was super excited about this one. And I bought it. And my first week of playing this game back in September is probably the most negative I have felt about a game that I had purchased for myself and that I was playing through, that I was excited about in a long, long time. Like, I was actively frustrated and disengaged with this game because they had stealth sequences, which is not usually a problem because it's Ubisoft and this is the company that brought you Assassin's Creed, and it should be okay. But their design did not give you enough kind of options to deal with those stealth sequences. And on top of that, the original design had them be auto fail if you ever got seen. So you couldn't adequately interact with the people that were guards and that were otherwise finding you in these areas. You couldn't do the things that you can do in Assassin's Creed with tags and whatnot because they would take all your equipment away as well as your gun. And it was just super harsh. And I was in places in the early stages of this game where I couldn't believe that this was my experience. And you would play these areas over and over and over again like it was the early PlayStation 2 era. And I remember being very frustrated with this game. But unlike most games that you kind of power through and you hope something is better and maybe it gets a little bit better, after you got through that kind of tutorial planet early stages of this game, I found myself playing one of my favorite Star Wars experiences of all time. Like, you had a spaceship, you were flying it around, you were going to these planets, and even in the tutorial places where I was getting frustrated, one of the things that was driving me on was that it was clear that there was so much detail and love of Star Wars as a kind of vibe and franchise in general that it was worth finding these new places, getting to the new planets, going further and finding more content in this game. And when I finally did that, it became one of my favorite experiences. I said on Twitter and in other places online that this game was a 9 out of 10 to me that was prefaced by a 4 out of 10. And that felt very unfair. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about, but one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up here was that this patch, which is led by a new creative designer at Ubisoft for this particular game, even after it launched, was a removal of those harsh stealth elements. And I wanted to talk about how that impacted the game, because this is the third time that I will have played through it now, which is my current playthrough. But also that I wanted to kind of give kudos to a company for actually saying, you know what? That probably was a misstep. We can do that better and actually change the fundamentals of this game that they already released and take it in a different direction, because it's a stealth game, right? It is more of a Splinter Cell than an Uncharted. And that is not what was entirely shown by the marketing of this game. And I think that's one of the reasons people had issues with it. But even now, it is a little bit messy at the front end, because what they did in Star Wars Outlaws is they took these auto stealth sections and they removed the auto stealth, but they didn't change much of anything else about how you're interacting with the space. So mostly, if you're seen in these areas now, you will be met with overwhelming force and probably have a bad time of it. You'll have a kind of limited ability to try to fight your way out of these things, but you're probably going to die. And one advantage that I have, having played it through a couple of times now, is that I can see the spaces that used to be auto-fail and know that this is not a time to get caught. And I think there probably needs to be some kind of notice in the game right this second that says, essentially, this used to be a place where if you got caught, you were just going to get ejected. So don't really try to kill yourself if you get seen here, because we're going to send 17 guards at you and it's not going to be fun. But overall, I like that it does at least allow a little bit more improvisation. It feels a little bit more like Star Wars in a kind of action-adventure sense than it used to. And as an underlying bit of this world and game, I am entirely enamored with the notion of essentially creating an open world that is all a series of vaults and banks and safes and heists to get enraptured in, like it was a Splinter Cell open world, right? Like, we can't fully imagine that because Ubisoft is never going to give us a Splinter Cell game ever again. But it is that in a Star Wars kind of package. And it met me where I lived, right? I got to go to these seedy bars. I got to go to see all these droids, hear all this crazy Star Wars music, have my own spaceship. And as a RPG fan, as a lover of story in video games, one of my favorite parts of this game is that it really gets Star Wars. There are unknown family dynamics. There are betrayals. There are twists. It is a much better version of the Solo movie when all is said and done. And it really feels like Star Wars at its core. And I am so, so glad that Ubisoft is trying to fix the 4 out of 10 front end of this thing, because more people deserve to see the 9 out of 10 back end.
What else kind of stuff did they did, Hoeg? I know they did it so you can, if you climb a ladder and you had a weapon, you don't immediately throw it away, which drove me crazy in the base version of the game.
Oh my God,
anything else really that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, the other big thing is that they're trying to add a little bit more fun to the combat, right? So they added weak points. You get a designation on the UI when you hit somebody in the head, or some other characters in other places. And they've added like a bonus kind of critical hit concept to that part of the combat. It is still a very lightly kind of sketched combat system, because ultimately they want you to be dashing to cover and kind of shooting your gun over your shoulder and feeling like a Han Solo type figure in that environment. It's more focused on the vibes. It's more focused on the role playing than the combat sophistication. And I've never been bothered by that, right? One thing I've defended a long time is like the Witcher 3's combat, because people bring that up as something that's a failure of that game. And to me, in Witcher 3, it's that this is what a Witcher would do. Like, you have to look at what you're fighting. You think about what oils to put on, what to get involved in, and then you're going to sword dance with these cats. And it's not necessarily engaging like a Devil May Cry or engaging even like a Souls or Elden Ring, but it is the role-playing of a Witcher. And I think that Star Wars Outlaws really captures, this is the role-playing of what it would feel like to primarily have a blaster at your side and a cute little Disney-type pet to help attack people around corners. And I think that it really meets that. And some people disagree, and that's fine. But I think that it gives you that fun as long as you're willing to meet it as, I'm going to role-play in the Star Wars universe, rather than I want it to be the Division or something more sophisticated on a shooting level.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the cast of the game? I remember thinking Kay's fine. She's all right.
I love Kay's voice actor. I was not expecting to like Kay very much.
She does do a good job. You're right.
And I was super surprised very early on, playing this in its original state, how much kind of she brought to line readings, right? We don't think about it usually. We don't break it down that much, but like there's a lot of kind of plain language, a lot of blunt plot points, as we talked about with Metaphor and Atlas games. It's not trying to be super sophisticated or super subtle. It's a Star Wars kind of writing approach. But she is a very good centerpiece for this personal role-playing Star Wars experience, right? You understand pretty intimately that this is a person trying to get out of a bad state, and she's very bad at it, right? So like unlike the baggage that you get with the Solo movie or Han Solo in general, which is where he ends up and you kind of know that you want to be rooting for him, Kay is a blank slate. And basically, if you want to just assume that everything she plans is going to go wrong in some way, and probably very wrong, you're going to get the experience of Star Wars Outlaws. But she's constantly kind of a positive force and an optimistic one in the Star Wars universe. And I think the voice actress brings a lot to the party there.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like Kay. I love Nyx. I love some other people that I don't want to get too spoilery on in the cast. But like I said, hidden relationships, Star Wars through and through, lots of good stuff.
How do you feel about the rep system in the game now that you've been through it a couple times? Do you think it's done well? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I do. I like the rep system. It's a little bit of a facade, right? Mm-hmm. So they sell it as you're going to make friends with one cartel and you're going to lose friendship with the other one, and you're going to have an easier time with it, and the world's going to kind of change around you. It's not a system. It's not a BioWare system where you're going to pick a different plot point and the whole world is going to change around that plot point. It's not that. And in fact, there's a lot of mechanisms in the game that essentially allow you to pick one side or the other in the major main quests, and then to fix it all up with side content that you can do for the other faction that you pissed off. And the game is really built around kind of making everybody happy at the same time to some extent, because it's all getting you access to various areas in the open world. So I can understand people feeling like it's a little bit of a play. It's a little bit of a put on. But I think overall, without trying to take away your access to these open world areas. Like, it would have been a lot worse if they tried to divide this off into different ways. So I like what they came up with as a kind of middle ground. I think this is the kind of game where, like Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2, this particular system, the reps and the cartels and everything else, could probably be built even better with a sequel try.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think about it now? Would you recommend the game now? Well, if you're listening now, it's probably on sale because of Black Friday stuff. So it'd be a good time. I would say, especially if you can get it on like $40. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Ubisoft has been a little bit stingy with Outlaws on its sale for Black Friday. It's only 25% off in most places that I saw, but I would wholeheartedly recommend it. I will say right now that it has a decent shot, I haven't decided on my list yet, of being my personal game of the year.
Okay.
And it is, I think, my favorite Star Wars game of all time. And I'm including their Knights of the Old Republic. I'm including their X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Dark Forces, Jedi Knight. I've played basically all the Star Wars games. And this, to me, is the one that says, I'm in Star Wars the best, which is what I'm looking for out of those experiences. That's not what everybody's going to be looking for. But for me, this game is my favorite Star Wars experience ever.
Cool. Gene, how are you feeling about Outlaws now? It's been a while since we've gone through it with these changes and everything like that. How's it looking?
Yeah, I have been intrigued by the updates. I've been paying attention to what was updated. I have the game, and I reviewed it and I gave it 3 stars. It's a good game, but I had issues with not so much the stealth. Everyone complained about that. It wasn't a big deal for me. I didn't like how limp the melee felt. I think they fixed that, actually. I think they put in like a little camera shake to kind of emphasize that Kay's actually punching someone as opposed to like lightly brushing their helmet, and then they die. They just fucking die.
I still think knocking people out that are in full helmets is an interesting choice, right? Like, they didn't have a better
really, it kind of pulls me out, man, because she's just like punching a helmet and then they're knocked out. She doesn't do any kind of extra kill or anything like that because this is a Disney PG game, so they're not gonna fucking kill any,
very Star Wars to me.
Anybody.
Just hitting a guy in the head. It's like, Ewoks, clubbing stormtroopers. It's like, come on.
It does have that.
You know what? Fair point. The Ewoks were just kind of throwing like pebbles at stormtroopers, and they're like, oh fuck, So this is Star Wars. That said, I did enjoy the game. I don't think Hoeg is crazy to say that this is the coolest Star Wars experience, because this is like I did say that. The game's uniqueness is that this is probably the broadest and most complete digital recreation of Star Wars ever made. Honestly, there was a clip of a guy who really knows Tatooine, because of course everyone does, but like he really knows Tatooine, and he was able to find Mos Eisley based on landmarks and not on like a checkpoint or waypoint. He was like, oh, the tower is there, and that building is over there, and there is Mos Eisley. So they actually like recreated the entire set design of some of these worlds down to the T. So I really think Star Wars Outlaws is kind of valuable as Ubisoft is really good at making Assassin's Creed games, right? Mm-hmm. And those games have their virtual tourism sections because Assassin's Creed as a series is really good at recreating real life locations or historical locations. And they kind of applied the expertise to Star Wars, where now we have a Star Wars game that feels like it's modeled off quote unquote real life, and that's fun and that's fascinating. So yeah, I haven't touched it. I actually have it installed in my PS5 Pro, but the reason why I haven't touched it though is because I heard that the PS5 Pro version is worse than the PS5 version.
Oh, really? Damn.
Yes.
It has been happening a little bit on some of these games.
Because you can't turn off the fucking ray tracing in Star Wars Outlaws at all. Ray tracing is odd all the time. And the ray tracing, the PSSR upscale resolution makes all the ray tracing super shimmery and blurry. So like as you're turning the camera, like every window and every pool of water and even the shadows will just start going like that, which is ridiculous. And you can't turn that shit off.
That's annoying.
It's so fucking stupid.
One of the things I was going to say is that I really love the 40 frames per second and like 16:9 implementation. For this game, like it really does feel like it has a very smooth, good performance on the PlayStation 5. I only have the base.
Yeah, you have the better version. You have the better version. You know, our boy Dustin is having to play his PS5 Pro offline with the Silent Hill 2 disc input in it because Silent Hill 2 Raw just runs better than the fucking PS5 Pro update. You know, so I mean that's how fucking stupid this PS5 Pro thing is. It's that. Yeah, I'm waiting for Ubisoft once again to fix Star Wars Outlaws, so I can enjoy. You know, it on the PS5 Pro. Like I'm like seriously thinking, like, should I just fucking like hook up the old PS5 again? Because for fuck's sake, this is ridiculous. You know. One
thing I will also add is I really love their first DLC. They came out with their first expansion to Outlaws like a couple weeks ago, called Wild Card, and it might be my favorite DLC of the year. That might be Lake House for Alan Wake. I can't really decide there. I wouldn't nominate either for Game of the Year, mind you. But I really, really, really like Wild Card. So
okay,
it's the Maverick expansion. It's
I'll check it out.
You know,
it's really
big high-end poker game.
The only thing stopping me is that the PS5 Pro version just looks worse. This just makes the game look worse now, and there's no way to change it back to the basic PS5 version, which is ridiculous.
So. Yeah, this game seems to be plagued with technical things, especially at launch, that it should not have had. I think it came out a little too early. I played it on PC when it came out, and it was all right, but it's not as good as it should be, especially from you. Well, not especially from Ubisoft, but they gotta work on that. We gotta stop coming out with things like in that state. But hopefully
that might be what they're doing with Assassin's Creed.
Maybe you could only hope. I guess
they took some extra time.
Yeah. But I think this game.
I've heard some shit about Assassin's Creed. Oh my god!
Oh
I'll
boy!
Tell you about it
Don't tell me that, Gene.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
I'm holding out for Shadows.
But yeah, I enjoyed Outlaws. I had some problems with it, but I enjoyed it overall. And it sounds like they made some improvements I had problems with. The stealth didn't bother me as much, like Gene, but I do think it was stupid, especially as
it is stupid. Yeah,
is like
even if it didn't bother me, I will say that
she would totally fight her way out of this kind of scenario. It doesn't make sense. So I'm glad they at least did that.
Well, I think the thing that frustrated me the most in those areas were that you weren't allowed to use your gun.
Yeah.
And what they did for those was you also weren't allowed to use equipment. Because I remember getting super frustrated at, okay, I can't use my gun, that's fine, but I have a tagging system with my electro binoculars. What do you mean I can't take those out? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so it's better now, even though it is a little bit messy because they weren't designed for what it is now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I did watch the FPS podcast. They interviewed the directors, and they didn't say much, but they did say that they did have to kind of go back and redo every single encounter because none of the game's AI in any of those sequences were not built to continue to fight, basically, which is incredible.
No, that makes sense. You wouldn't. That would be wasted resources. So that's all good. I think the only thing I would add is some kind of notification. They'd have to figure out something smoother than this, but this used to be a stealth area, and it's not anymore, because I think there is a usefulness to the fact that I can recognize all those areas that were that and say, okay, I have to treat this a little bit differently, and that's just not there right now.
Let's see. We got a question from TJ Barr here. Salutations, Summoners. Question for Hoeg. We kind of talked about this, but we'll reiterate it. I got Star Wars Outlaws pre-launch and haven't touched it since Maddie's initial review demonstrated to me that I should probably wait until the game has improved. Has it? Since the great patch in mid-November, would you say that it's a worthwhile experience by now? Thank you for taking my question. I love all the podcasts you guys are doing. Keep up the great work.
Yes, I absolutely would. You get a full recommendation from me. I probably would have recommended it even with the gnashing of teeth sections that I had early on, but it's much easier to recommend now because I think it is it is going to meet you where you feel like playing it better than it did before. And so it's not going to drive you nuts. It's a little bit hard for me to judge because once you go through these areas, once you figure out where the key pathways are, you can't take that knowledge out of your brain. So to some extent, the frustrating things that I had to deal with the first time, I can interact with the new way that they've designed them, but I also know what the golden path is for some of these things. So I hesitate to say like guarantee you're going to have a good time with it, but I think you are. If you like Star Wars, especially. If you don't, your mileage may vary even more. But if you like Star Wars, you literally are going to walk into a cantina in a brand new place. You're going to play cards with some unusual characters. And you're going to hear like diegetic music from the band. And to me, one of the things that it really feels like is a Disney or amusement park kind of experience. Not Galaxy's Edge so much, but what they are capable of doing with a fully kind of set decorated area. It really does feel like there could be cameras just off the side of the screen filming your scene in a way that's super cool. And if you really, really love the way Star Wars is filmed, they do have those options, like I was mentioning, to take your particular game to 16:9 and then to have the camera filter out lights like they did in the 70s so that they have the kind of really stretched lighting framework. And it feels like Star Wars through and through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we'll see how it does. I don't know how well it's sold, but it's a good game. I think it would be really great to get a sequel for that game. Like you were saying also, Hoeg, a second shot, I think could really iron out some of those kinks they had before. So hopefully they get another shot at it.
Yeah, I love it, sincerely. And yes, my daughter loves Nyx, the little Disney side moppet that you get with the main character. So yeah, go for it again, Ubisoft. I'll back you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nyx is a great character. I really enjoyed Nyx, and Nyx, I call it Star Wars Outlaws a secret Watchdog sequel because Nyx basically takes the form of like the hacking mechanic, basically.
Oh yeah, you see all Ubisoft DNA kind of throughout their games.
Yeah,
they take ideas from everything. But I mean, it's whatever. It's their work, so
that's cool. It worked for me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars Outlaws isn't doing that amazing, which is crazy. But I think it really speaks to, again, like the flagging interest in all these old 1980s Lucasfilm type IP. You know,
I think
not ideal for anybody releasing an Indiana Jones franchise.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah,
that's my thing.
I think there is some verification. I think I agree with you to an extent on some of that, Gene. I just think this game launched in not a great state or good enough state, and I think it got a lot of flack for that kind of thing. Like even, Jedi Survivor launched in not a great state, but it sold pretty damn well right away. Certainly better than this game did, but I don't know.
And I like Outlaws better than the Jedi games. I will say that.
There you go.
That's pretty easy for me. And I know people love the Jedi games. That's just not my type of game so much.
Yeah. I think with this game, it was just hard to kind of like tell what the hook is, other than it's an open world Star Wars game. But I think that is the hook. It's an open world Star Wars game. You've never had that before,
Yeah, that's the hook.
Yeah.
Not out of anything not made out of Legos.
Right.
But yes,
Legos or severely, scaled back like KOTOR, and not an MMO like Old Republic, So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Old Republic's probably the best argument for an existing open world Star Wars game, but it doesn't feel to me like it felt like watching the Star Wars movies because Outlaws captures that original trilogy feel, even though it uses a couple of Disney planets in a way that a lot of these projects don't. I think KOTOR, which I love, right? A great BioWare story, a great RPG, just doesn't get to that same place of I'm living in Star Wars as this game does. So if that at all feels like it might appeal to you, check this one out, honestly.
Cool. All right, boys, sticking with Disney, I played a little bit of Disney's Epic Mickey Rebrushed. So you guys are old enough like me to remember kind of when the concept art got leaked a long time ago for the original game. And it was really good concept art, really awesome. Something we had never really seen from like Mickey Mouse and all that kind of stuff. And of course it came out, I played it, and it had a lot of problems, I think. I think it has a really cool premise and really great art style, the Wii version specifically. But just things like the camera and some of the systems like the paint thinner and the normal paint didn't pan out as much as I was hoping. And they did a sequel. I have it. I've never played it, though, so I don't really know if I'm sure it's not great because I haven't heard good things about it.
I straight up didn't know they made one.
Yeah, they did. It was like called The Power of Two. It was with Mickey and Oswald, I believe, teaming up. But yeah, dude, they've surprisingly have done like a remake of this game. I never thought Epic Mickey would come back in any certain way, but it is done by Purple Lamp, who is the studio, I believe, who did the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom remake, which I played, and that was my first time playing that game, and I thought it was really good, actually. a really good remake, and I think they did the Cosmic Shake later on too. But yeah, they did this remake for for Epic Mickey, and I'm really impressed, especially visually at this remake. It looks really good. It's translated really well. They've done an awesome job of updating everything. And playing it now, having 2 analog sticks playing this game is like a world of difference. Instead of playing it on the Wii and like rotate, the camera was such a problem in the original game. I remember like just really bad angles, couldn't get the proper things, especially because you had to point and shoot the ink at everything. So it was a problem. But let me just say the premise of this game is a cool idea. I really like it. It takes place in a world where kind of all the rejected Disney characters go. So Oswald, who was a Disney creation before Mickey Mouse, is kind of like the leader there. So he is like the forgotten Mickey, and there's all these forgotten characters there. And it's going through this turmoil of these like ink blob monsters coming in, ruining everything. And this is all done because Mickey, which I really like, is a nod to him, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, him getting his nose into something he shouldn't have done, just like exactly like Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's with Yensid and all that kind of stuff. And he totally messes up. He spills his magic ink on this world and it infects everything. And eventually Mickey gets dragged into this world. And now he's kind of figure out how to save it and get out of there, essentially. And I think it's really important to sell this game is that the visuals of it, especially if someone who like me and maybe many people out there who like the old Disney animation a lot, like the 30s or like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, all that kind of stuff, like the way it all looked, this really captures that. It has beautiful cutscenes in the game. Absolutely fantastic. I forgot the artist's style they're taking inspiration for it, but it looks really good. There is no voice acting in the game though, so if that is something for you that's going to bother you, tough luck. They do a lot of like the grunts, like the blah, 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 kind of stuff, like talking like that. That's how they all talk.
I think of that as Banjo-Kazooie speak.
Yeah, so, Banjo-Kazooie, not quite as much as like blah, 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 constantly, but they just do like little things like that every now and then. But it is very much still a 2010 Wii game in the sense that the areas are pretty small, but they're cool to go through. Like the beginning of the game is, think of everything in this world as like a messed up version of what you think of at Disneyland. Like the first thing you go through is like a messed up version of a small world. There's like decaying structures everywhere, really weird, like goop monsters coming through. There's a bunch of like little gizmo characters that were old Disney characters. Like I said, a bunch of the lost ones there. So you're going through these worlds. But the whole thing about the game is you are Mickey, you have paint and you have thinner. So you have 2 options to deal with every scenario. You can use paint on guys to like, you could be good, I guess, and use the blue paint on them. Then they can turn to your side and not destroy them. Or you can use the thinner and totally take everyone out. You can do that. You can do that also on bosses. And this is kind of like the game's, I guess, morality system. Your Mass Effect Renegade or whatever, Paragon thing going like that. Not nearly as complicated as that, but kind of a good / bad option, I suppose. So that is something you have to do with this. Comes into things with bosses. You can either paint them blue to try to just get them back on track, or you can just kind of wipe them out with a thinner if you want to be a little more Sidious, which feels a little strange for Mickey to do that, but I do also like that is an option. Of course, this is made by Warren Spector, who did Deus Ex, so he's all about that kind of player choice, not nearly as in-depth as anything like that, so don't get your hopes up if you're curious about it, but it's just a little bit and kind of fun to do that. But what I like about the paint thing is in the environments, there's a lot of things you can either erase or fill in. So say you're walking through a structure early on in the game, you have to find this like a wrench for a character. And there's teacups that are like the spinning teacups from Disneyland. And to find it, you have to use the thinner and it gets rid of a teacup and you can find in there. So that's something you can do throughout a lot of the game, is finding secrets and stuff like that. And there's options like certain parts like, hey, do you want to fix this attraction with thinner or paint? And you get these morality choices that I don't think are that deep, like I was saying earlier, but I am curious to see how it continues on as I go through, because it's been so long since I've played through the whole game. But right now I'm in the game. I'm at I guess it's kind of like the hub of the game now. It's called Mean Street. It's essentially Main Street now, but you can go through all these shops, like a ice cream parlor, buy items. There's collectibles to get, of course, all that good stuff. Later on, there's like parts you can find for like a Robo Donald and Goofy, I believe. So there are collectibles out there and stuff to buy with all your things. You can get like sweet concept art, which I think is really great. Honestly, I like all the concept art in the game, so it's really cool to get that. But it is a very simple platformer, something too crazy. You know, you got your jump, you double jump, you spin around in your paint. That's about it. But it's been enjoyable so far. When it came out, it was $60, and I think that's a little too much for a remake of the game this old. Like when I saw it was 60, I was like, ooh, I'll hold off on that. Black Friday sales though came out $40. I was like, all right, I'm in, baby. So I got that. But I'm enjoying it. I think just some small tweaks like the camera have really helped me enjoy more. Like I said, it's not the deepest game, but it's cool, especially if you're into old Disney stuff. I think you'll have a good time here. Like some of the areas you go to are all based on attractions. There's like a Space Mountain, Tomorrowland kind of area. There's like a Peter Pan kind of pirates area later on and stuff like that, Haunted Mansion world. So all that stuff's really cool. The art style is gorgeous in this game. I'm really happy with how it looks. I think they've done a great job updating it. I've been playing it on PS5. It runs really well so far, really smooth. It's on Switch too. It's on everything actually, I think. So if you're curious about it, it's a cool game. I like it. I think if you like Mickey Mouse or like any old Disney platformers, you'll have a good time. If you're not into any of that stuff though, probably not for you. But
that's fair.
I think it's a cool game. Hoeg, I believe you have some experience with this game as well. The original, at least.
I do actually. I have some experience with the remake.
Okay.
This is one of the remake projects that I am the most kind of supportive of. Right, I'm on record being a little bit non-excited about things like The Last of Us being remade or the Horizon Zero Dawn upgrade for PlayStation 5, those kinds of things. I like it when you can pull a game that had issues with the technological landscape of its environment when it released and say, okay, well, we can handle that now. And this, I think, was a great pick for some developer to go and say, that is a project that we can fix. And I think that they did. I think that the graphics really are very impressive for this game, especially if you compare it to what it looked like originally, and I highly recommend it. I don't think this is like Warren Spector or Looking Glass's like strongest design. No. So I think it's still a weaker game of their portfolio, but I'm very glad that this kind of remake exists. I would see more of these out in the world, and I like this game. Now, as a lawyer, I do have to mention this has one of my favorite lawyer-type stories in video games, which is, you mentioned Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. This was a character that Disney lost the rights to. The Disney company lost the rights to Universal to this character because of the way that they had originally sold the cartoons. And so when they were going to make this game, or shortly before it, I don't remember the exact details of the story, Disney said, we want that back. And I think it was Universal. I think it's Universal because I think it was NBC ultimately said, okay, we will give you Oswald the Lucky Rabbit if you give us, I might get the announcer wrong, I think it's Al Michaels, to announce our football games for us. So you have to give us his contract and we'll give you this intellectual property to this rabbit. And like that was a kind of legal intellectual property settlement that hit me where I lived in both sides, video games, Disney, and football coverage. And I thought that's just the coolest thing to a young lawyer. Like this happened either while I was in law school or shortly after law school. And so that led to Epic Mickey. And I just think that's fantastic. Reasonable minds can differ on whether that's fantastic or not, people. I don't have a great compass for whether intellectual property stories are interesting, but I think that one is.
I think that's interesting. I didn't know that. So I didn't know they lost the rights to Oswald or anything like that, but that is very funny. And I think that's cool that they got him back just for this game. Also, if you got a kid or something, like you need like games to play with your family or something like that, you could totally play this game with your family. Very family friendly. Alrighty, we're back. Sorry about that. Gene had to go anyways for a little bit for a work thing, but he will be back in the episode later on. But for right now, it's just going to be me and Hoeg right now getting intimate about Rise of the Golden Idol. Now, Hoeg, is this a sequel to, what was it, Curse of the Golden Idol?
It is. Okay. Yes. So for those that don't know, this is a mystery game series where you are really not a character in the mystery, as it were. You are an outside observer. You are shown scenes of something happening, and then you have to fill in essentially a Mad Libs kind of document that explains what it is that you are seeing, which is a very difficult thing to sell. It's a very difficult thing to explain. But the gist of this is that it's a mystery solving game. You have to figure out what everybody's name is, who's killing who, why they're killing them, what they're stealing or not stealing, whatever's happening in these fairly static scenes that you are seeing. And for my money, it's probably the best system that I've ever seen for feeling like you're actually being a detective, actually solving a mystery in these types of games. The original version of the Golden Idol series had graphics that can be best described as something like Commodore 64 graphics, or that you might remember from your computer lab days if you go back that far. This one is the sequel. It's a little bit snazzier. It's a different art style. It's not anything that's going to blow you away anytime soon. It's still an indie game. But it's really most important because of that notion of solving mysteries yourself and accessibility. And I don't mean accessibility by the way we talk about things with like colorblind settings and all the various other ways you can make a video game accessible. I mean like non-gamers actually interacting with this game. I have seen people, including my family members, say, what is going on there? And really getting invested in how are we going to figure out that person's name and how are we going to figure out what it is that is in their backpack, etc., in a way that I don't usually see. So I wanted to call this one out as one of my favorite experiences of the year because I love mystery games. I play a lot of indie mystery games because a lot of indies are constantly kind of thinking about how should we solve mysteries? How should we deal with these things? I bought a game recently that I'm enjoying called Mind Cop, where you dive into people's minds and you mind surf and you figure out what is true and what is lies in their minds while solving a crime. And it's very good. But I think that it's a little bit less approachable than something like Rise of the Golden Idol. And this particular game, as a sequel, also introduces some concepts that weren't in the original, or at least not as directly in the original, like combining various of the mysteries and then kind of asking you questions about what this all means together as you go on. So it's divided into chapters and you go through the chapters. And at its heart is, unsurprisingly, the Golden Idol, which may or may not be some kind of eldritch weapon calling on the powers of Cthulhu, lighting people on fire, various other things. I don't want to spoil any bit of this game, but there's something going on. Golden Idol, something's wrong with that Golden Idol, and you learn about it as you go. And it's really, really excellent. I think this whole game takes place in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. The earlier game took place in like the 16th or 17th century. I believe like just a completely different vibe for this game. The other thing I wanted to mention about this is that maybe a month or two ago, the Golden Idol, the original, got a revamp for consoles from its original release. So this game always kind of worked on consoles, but it was originally made for PC, and so it had kind of the cursor movement and things that didn't feel great when you were playing it on a controller looking at your television screen. And they gave it a new kind of gloss up, which in retrospect is clearly the things that they were working on for the sequel. But it really works very well on, I play both these games right now on the Switch. You'll see from the graphics, if you go and check this out, that it doesn't need anything more than the Switch to run. But it is a very good, even console experience at this point. And I have never felt kind of a game achieve that sense of, I really solved something. I really did something here, as well as this particular game has done. So I recommend it to everybody that likes that mystery solving kind of concept. I'm a kid that used to open up Games Magazine and solve logic puzzles and do those kinds of things. And this is that in video game form. So I love this thing.
You're playing on Switch. Does it have like touchscreen controls or anything like that?
I think it does. I don't usually take it out of the dock. I'm the weirdest Switch player. I play only on the TV.
Oh, that's me too.
But yes, I think it has touchscreen options.
Okay.
But you don't need them in docked mode. It just kind of leaps between areas to look at. Like I only describe the scenes, but you're going to be constantly kind of checking out people that are talking and what is on them, what's in their inventory, what's in their purse, that kind of thing. And you're going to be collecting words that are important. Okay. For this, what is the game is filling out this event list of what's happening in front of you.
walk me through, like, let's say you start a new level or scene, whatever, how it's presented. Walk me through the steps you go through. Like, you're starting to play this game. How is it? How do you solve anything? What are you doing? I guess exactly.
I will do that. I will try to make up one using elements from a couple of things because I don't want to give away any puzzles.
Well, if you do it, just do like an early one or something like that.
Yeah, I imagine that you see two people engaged in a kind of fight of some kind. One is pushing the other, and they're going to get electrocuted by the thing directly behind them. Mm-hmm. And then it will have something on the bottom of your screen that says blank blank pushed blank blank because blank blank into blank. You'll have to figure out. You'll be able to tell because they're divided into different colors for those particular entry points for names and items and feelings and whatever it is that you're collecting for that particular scene. That you're going to be putting names together, and then you're going to be saying why this person is doing that thing, or you're going to be able to figure it out from the structure of the sentence. And then you're going to have shining points of light in this scene that you're going to be able to click on. And when you do, you'll see the person that's doing the pushing, and they'll be saying, "I told you, Richard, don't take that from me." And you'll say, "Okay, this person he's pushing is probably first named Richard." Then you'll go and you'll click on that person, and they'll say, "Enough of this," or whatever, some kind of light little piece of dialogue. But you'll also notice that on the graphic of their uniform, it says Daniels. And you'll say, "Okay, this person with this face that will be a screen cap of the overall scene is named Richard Daniels," and what have you. And you'll be doing that throughout. But it'll be 150 of those throughout the scene. And even though I described it as pretty obvious that the guy's name is Richard and all these various things in that particular instance, when you look at all those in rapid succession, at least if you're me, you will find that you skip in your head some of the obvious things that you are being told about these people. And you'll have to go back a number of times to kind of say, all right, do I know what this person's name is? Do I know what it is that they bought at the auction? Whatever it might be, using all these various clues. And in order to get to those solves, a lot of these scenes are broken down further. So you've got the overall events list that you have to fill in, and then it'll have maybe just a list of people in the scene so you can name everybody and you can work off of that, and then that'll feed into the main events stream, and then maybe something else, right? Like one of the ones I really liked early on in this game is that there are people that are in a car accident or something like it at a drive-in movie. But it's also clearly some kind of costume festival. And they'll be referring to each other as their character names from this science fiction movie. And like the very last thing that you can solve, which is really the first thing you should solve, is who are the names of these characters on this movie poster for this movie, so that you can start to understand who people are referring to in their notes and things because they're dressed in costume. And so you can see how all of those scenes can kind of go further and further and further. And then you can have littler things that you can solve to solve bigger things, to finally be able to describe what's happening here. And the best feeling that you get from this game is you look at these scenes and you see a car on fire and you see an alien yelling at some woman dressed as a 60s dancer. And you're like, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to tell you what any of this is. And you'll talk to the first couple of people and you're not really talking to them. You're not a character in this game. You're an observer. But you'll get their little dialogue. You'll see that they're holding 6 pence and a Japanese fan and be like, okay, great. What does that tell me? I don't have any idea. And the feeling from going from that point to, I know who the aliens are on the poster. I know what movie this is. I know why I care. I know what this person did. I know what this person did. And I know why these people bet on it, is a great feeling. It really is like feeling like you are collecting the notes at the scene and you are solving everything just from this original picture that you didn't feel told you anything when you started out.
How would you say, like, I guess the difficulty is in this game, Hoeg? It's such a weird thing to gauge, I feel like, in a puzzle game. And especially, I guess, how it would progress throughout the game. Is it ever to a point where you're just like stuck for 20, 30 minutes or you get frustrated? Or has it all been pretty at a good pace where you feel like it doesn't take you too long, but not too easy to figure things out? How's it feeling for you?
So one thing I will say is it has a hint system.
Okay.
It is a smart hint system insofar as it has a couple of things that I think are really useful. It does some stuff when you ask for a hint that says essentially do this breathing exercise first and then think about what you really want to know, because the game is figuring this stuff out. And so it kind of lightly dissuades you from getting certain hints on certain things, but you can always use that if you need it. I think it's very fair. It's most frustrating when you have like 90% of it right. And it'll give you the warning that says essentially 2 or fewer of the slots are wrong. And you don't know exactly what it might be looking for differently, because some of the words might be synonyms. And maybe I could say this a little bit differently. I know what happened, game. I just am not telling you right. Can be a little bit of a frustration there, but that hasn't come up a lot.
Okay.
I think there is increasing in difficulty as it goes along, as you might expect. There's one that I think is going to be pretty hard for people that don't love math, where you're trying to figure out how an auction went down. And you have to use like what people had before the auction in their wallets and what they had after, and then a list of what the prices were for the various items to start figuring out who everybody is. But you add on to that they've also bought drinks, and those are at different prices, and you still again don't know who the person is that you're looking at, and it becomes this kind of iterative calculation that can become quite difficult in that instance. But that might be unique to me, right? I'm the one that mentions lawyer math on my channel because it's not what we're known for.
Right. So yeah, you're talking about this kind of like case or scene, I guess. This one with the auction sounds pretty interesting to me. How are all the scenes? Have you been interested in every single one you've done?
Oh yeah. I mean, just like the first game, this game is playing with the supernatural at the same time that it's playing with murder mystery. And part of the kind of meta context for all these things is, why am I being shown this? Right? Okay, I was just shown this weird car accident. Why am I being showing this prison escape? And then one of the things I think this game does better than its predecessor even is say, all right, we showed you 4 scenes. How do these all work together? And then you have to answer kind of a super set of Mad Libs that explains that this person is the person that did this thing, that this is that, and that's why this person was trying to break out of jail, and et cetera, as you go through these various scenes, and you build up this whole kind of epic about the fight over this golden idol or not, and what it's doing to people or not.
Cool. Let's see here. We got writing from Cameron. Hi guys. Yeah. Question for Hoeg. Rise of the Golden Idol is the 3rd acclaimed game from PlayStick this year. They are on an impressive roll. Do you think we're looking at the next publisher of choice for indie games? Keep up the great content, team. Best, Cameron.
This shows how well a job I do of keeping track of who's publishing anything. I didn't even notice. What else have they made?
PlayStack. Did I say stick? PlayStack.
You did. But
yeah, PlayStack, not stick.
That is okay, because I still don't fully recognize it. I buy a lot of indie games. I like supporting indie development, and I like weird designs, and you get the best weird designs from indie games. But I have to be honest, I don't always pay attention to who is making the games I love so much. With one exception, which is a publisher I really like that I think I should mention here, because they did make the previously mentioned Mind Cop game. And that is, I think it's Dear Villagers. And they are focused on narrative indie games in a way that some other publishers are not. So I really do like them. They make the story-based games. They made a game called the Forgotten City, I want to say. Maybe that's not right.
That sounds right.
Oh, okay. That is one of my favorites of the last couple of years. My family loves that game. My family has some weird games that they adore. Their favorite game of the last 5 years is The Outer Wilds.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know that one, they adore that one, which if you get into that game and you understand the narrative is a little weird thing for my little daughters to love, but they love it.
Sounds like they like mystery kind of games, like figuring out stuff like that.
They do. They love mystery games. My youngest loves murder as a concept in these mystery games. Not, I don't think, to commit, but we work on that. And so she loves the Ace Attorney series. She loves doing those kinds of things. The Smiling Man was a little much for her, a little too dark, but she does love Ace Attorney. And they have played the Golden Idol with me, but I think the graphics turned them off a little bit.
Sure.
To this series, so that can happen. I'm looking at PlayStack. They did Balatro, so yeah.
Oh, really?
That's a good win for them.
Yeah, that's a great win for them. Wow. Well
so yeah,
done.
they did Golden Idol. They did Balatro. that's they're having a good time. They might well be one of the big indie developers very soon.
So I guess this is technically a sequel. Does it feel like you need to play the first one at all in any way?
I think you'll get a little bit more out of it if you play the first one. But I don't blame anybody for looking at the first one's graphics and saying that's a bridge too far for me. Sure. This one I think is a slightly bit more approachable.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the visuals of this, and it is quite a bit different, but I'm glad to see that all the characters are still hideously ugly. And I think that was a very important thing in the first game. So I'm glad they have carried that over as well. So that's good stuff. I would have been disappointed.
Not attractive folk.
Yeah, I would have been disappointed if they weren't. But yeah, cool. Sounds awesome. I would love to play the first one someday. I remember when I was at Easy Allies, Bloodworth was big time into it, the first one. So it always seemed really cool to me. But hopefully one day.
I love this game. To me, the Golden Idol series seems like an offshoot of a game that I really think broke through on mystery solving, which is The Curse of the Obra Dinn. If you haven't played that one, that's a few years back, but it's the same kind of vibe. You're going to see something and figure out what happened. This is the iteration on that concept.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds really cool. Alrighty, Hoeg. It's time for Sort It Out right now. In this segment, we talk about something in the game industry that we're not too pleased with, something that needs a little sorting, something that they could do better. Could be a game itself, a game company, someone at a game company, whatever you want. Now, Hoeg, do you have anything this week?
Yeah, I do. I gave Star Wars Outlaws its kudos, but I do think that Ubisoft overall should be working on releasing games that are better at the start on release. And I feel this way not just about Ubisoft, but really about the game industry in general. I had the same kind of feeling with Veilguard. As those that watch that spoiler cast know already about me, I feel like the first 10 hours or so of Veilguard is a real car crash of kind of getting thrown into that world and figuring things out. And then it kind of reaches a better zone after a time. Outlaws should never have had to go through that 4 out of 10 to start out the game. And honestly, there needs to be kind of production systems in place to say, you know what, that isn't working, and we need to make sure that we clear that up before it goes out to the public, because otherwise you get burned on a very good game ultimately in the reviewer's eyes, in the public's eyes, because it went out the door the way it did. And I'm hopeful, regardless of what Gene teased earlier, that the Assassin's Creed delay is Ubisoft taking a step back and saying, we need to make sure we hit these things at the start and not 3 months later. But that's what I would ask be sorted out at this point.
Mine's a little more lighthearted and jokey this week, but mine is so there was Sony's having its 30th anniversary, either today or very soon. I forgot exactly which day it is, but Bloodborne also had maintenance on that same day or around that same time, and people were once again being like, raising an eyebrow to that. Now, I know we're all coping and we all wish for Bloodborne, but guys, don't get your hopes up, please. I'm begging you, all of you out there, do not get your hopes up for Sony to do anything about this. Don't expect anything. Don't buy into it, because it's like a 98% chance it's not happening. Now, if it does, I'll be just as thrilled as all of you. But guys, don't get invested in it. Please don't. Don't do it. Don't get excited about Bloodborne coming back, at least quite yet. All right, guys?
That's good advice. Yes. No.
Because we've all been there. We all want it, but I don't know. Sony's weird with it. Hopefully someday they do something that I doubt it's happening, but if it does, awesome. But don't count on it. All right, let's hear from the audience about this, or a couple of sorted outs from the audience. It's from Josh Ball. All right, boys, I have a huge sorted out to meta this week. I was looking forward to the Black Friday / Cyber Monday sale because I just got a Quest 3 and I was looking to add quite a bit to my VR library. But no, the Black Friday sale excludes about 10% of users. So me and many others like me get left out. Sorted out meta. What is this, Hoeg? They're just not getting sales? That doesn't seem legal in any way. What do you think this is?
Honestly, I don't know just from that description, but it can certainly be the case that any company that's selling goods on their storefront or subscriptions or anything else can say this is only going to be valid for people that have been here for X amount of time before now. if that's what they think is the best sales policy. So I definitely don't think it's illegal, but I also don't quite know what I'm looking at just based on that note.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know why you would do that to people in the first place. You think you just want to get as many people invested in that platform as you can, but especially because VR, I'm sure Quest is probably the most popular or one of the most popular, but seems strange to me. I don't know. That would really rub me the wrong way as well. So we feel for you, Josh.
I think some companies are trying to figure out how to satisfy different groups of their customers in different ways and don't want to offend. Like, I don't think this would have happened. So I think it's perfectly fine to say sort it out to Meta because this doesn't make a lot of sense to me just from what I've heard so far. But I think it's possible for a company to come in and say, we don't want it to feel like our biggest supporters, the people that jumped in at full price, the people that have been with us for a couple of years on the Quest 3 are going to be disadvantaged in some way by the newcomers, right? I don't think that would happen. I don't think that would be the case here. I think in general, people that are early adopters of technology understand that for that technology to succeed, you need new people to come in and also invest in that project. But it's possible that someone at a storefront owner like Meta could think that and decide to make a rule like that.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. I guess like if you want to have this sale, in my opinion, and also reward your early adopters, is give them something, I guess, free or something small or like a discount or something. You can give them something, some sort of compensation if you're worried about that. But I think it is the most important to recognize that, as you said, early adopters, you're buying into something early. And most people understand that. So obviously, if you buy something right when it comes out, it's going to be cheaper down the line. So it's just the way it is. But yeah, that sucks, Josh. Hopefully you can get some good sales, though. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff on the Meta 3. I'll say that.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of great things about Batman and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess if you're into VR, it's a good platform. Okay. This is from Errant Rob. Hey, Sacred Summoners, sex symbols. My sort out this week goes to games that feel like they force you to respec for a particular boss or build, to cheese mode. I'm sorry, I'm going to reread this. This is written kind of weird. Force you to respec for a particular boss. So, like, we've all been there and that kind of stuff. We'll get into this. I enjoy Black Myth Wukong until the final secret area boss, who forced me to reallocate all my points and change my entire playstyle. I know Elden Ring and other games have faced similar complaints before, but this is the first boss that almost filtered me out of finishing a game. So sort that shit out, boss respec rejects, and keep on keeping on. Okay, Hoeg. Has this been something you've ran into in games?
Yes, although not in the Souls game context, because I'm not usually running around those fields. I think this year this is something that can be attributed to one of the games that I've really had difficulty kind of talking about with folks this year, which is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I think towards the end of its running time has what I usually consider to be hard lock or hard counter boss fights that require you to build your character in a specific way in order to work with them. In the case of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there's a heavy parry boss at the end. There's a DPS check at the very end. These various things I really don't like about forcing you into what should be an open build kind of RPG into very specific builds. And worse than that, I don't like that in those particular instances, in that particular game, you essentially have to have read the developer's mind to know that it's coming. Or else you have to lose, you have to say, you know what, I really need to be built this way, go back, rebuild, and come back again. Because again, I role play in my role-playing games. I like to be in that story and figuring out my way, muddling through without a guide. And I don't want to feel like, oh, okay, I have to envision that I died and respawned an hour before, change up what I'm building, and then come back to you, because I feel like that takes away from the role-playing experience. So Rebirth is my game that does that towards the end most specifically. And I think that's even more frustrating for me because they don't really do it throughout the game, right? So you're not expecting them to be that kind of harsh in terms of puzzle bossing as they are at the end.
For me, especially like in the circumstance that Aaron's talking about here, is he's talking about like a secret final area in the game. And I think final, especially secret bosses, should be very challenging. And I know for all of these games, you can definitely beat them without respecting. Sure, it could be easier to respec, but they're doable. Like I think Black Myth Wukong, you can respec for free or it's very cheap. I remember you could in the game, so it's not like a big deal to me. But it's optional content to me, and I think that stuff should be very challenging. Like Rebirth has some very challenging optional content as well later on, like some of the boss fights. So I think that's fine. And I don't know, maybe I'm just the minority that I think it's cool to have hard final bosses or at the tail stretch of a game. But I don't really know, like, I didn't run into that issue, Hoeg, with my playthrough. I don't know, but I don't know what build you did. It's just different for every person.
I'm fully willing to yield that you're better than me.
No, it's not. I mean,
I say this about everybody else.
I just had a different experience, so I don't really know. But I think that is something interesting to think about, and like how to handle that kind of stuff, and like what options they could do to make it easier for people who don't really want to respec and stuff like that. Like they had difficulties, right? You could bump it down, I guess, or something like that. But I know a lot of people don't want to. But it would be interesting to see what they could kind of do to flex that out for more people, or somehow address it to make it a little more streamlined, I guess, so you don't feel like I got to hit the brakes for a little bit and kind of piece this all back together to figure it out. Like,
and I don't hate respecing in every instance. I'm on record as saying I like Diablo 4, for instance. I like, as you said, with optional bosses, I like having something that challenges you to say, what can I get this engine to do? What can I get this build to actually accomplish? So throw the hardest thing you got at me and see if I can figure out a way over that hurdle. I don't mind that. Mm-hmm. I do mind it a little bit more in the main progress pathway.
Sure.
Especially if you haven't checked me on that stuff before, and everything else, say in a dungeon, is simple for me to get through. It really feels bad when you hit the brakes that hard, as it happened to me in Rebirth. Sure. But it doesn't. I have no doubt that other people, other folks, have a different experience in these games than me. It's one of the reasons I don't envy kind of critical reviewers of these things, is because I know I'm not the best at any given part of any of these games. I got to the end of chapter 1 on Black Myth Wukong, I think, and I saw that cutscene, and I think that's as far as I ever got.
Sure.
So I'm definitely not playing secret optional bosses towards the end of the game, but I also don't want, in a game that ostensibly allows me to build in any way that I want, to be forced in one specific way. And I don't want to be forced in one specific way that I can only learn after I've hit the hurdle. So you have to check me on that in the area before.
It's been a while since I've played Rebirth, so whenever I revisit it, I will definitely pay attention to that kind of stuff at the end, Hoeg, and really try to focus in on it, because it is interesting. And I wonder what they can kind of do, because, people of all skills play these games, and I think it's a constant struggle as a developer to find a happy balance for everybody. And I don't know if you're going to be able to, but it is something interesting to think about. And like, honestly, I'm not trying to be like, I'm better than you at games or like that. I don't have any problem with that with anyone in games. I just trying to understand more perspectives. That's all.
And I'm trying to say I don't mind one way or the other. I understand where I sit on the totem pole here. It is okay.
Yeah, it's just we all come from different spots, I guess, and have different strengths and other things. But we're all there to have fun, so whatever. Okay, this is from Andrew Feisner. Sorted out Xbox. I shouldn't need to have Game Pass Ultimate to cloud stream games I already own. It's understandable for the ones that I don't, but for the ones I do, it's kind of ridiculous. It's already paid for, so what's the specific reason to need the highest tier of your subscription service when you already got my money? If we were on a lower tier, I'd be more understanding, but this is kind of dumb. Sorted out, Phil. Glad Brad beat you to become the Pokemon champion. Just for some context, I played through Pokemon Gold recently, and my rival's name was Phil, after Phil Spencer. So I did destroy him with my Pokemon. Gene is back. Hello, Gene.
I sure am. And am I muted now?
No, we can hear you now.
Your mic is working.
Okay, good. Yeah, for some reason, the recording equipment just like froze completely, and I couldn't even turn it off or unmute it or anything like that. So I just had to unplug the whole thing and then also do my interview real quick, and I'm already back. It's already done.
Okay, good. All right, awesome. Gene, we're just about to finish.
No pay from me, hopefully.
We're just about to finish Sorted Out. Gene, do you have anything this week you think?
Sorted Out PlayStation for their 30th anniversary UI update, which is beautiful and cool, and audio wise sounds amazing. Have you guys checked it out? Have you guys?
I heard about it. I haven't looked at it yet today, though.
Yeah, turn on your PS5 and it'll get a brand new update, and it's gonna launch with the PS1 boot sound, which is just glorious.
That's great. That's
glorious.
good. That is glorious. You're right.
It's perfect. I wish they so sorted out Sony for making this limited time only. It'd be nice to just have the boot up sound like all the time for the PS5. Oh my goodness, especially if you own a 30th anniversary edition.
Yeah. I think, Gene, if there's enough demand, maybe they'll keep it. Like, why wouldn't you keep it, I guess?
It's stupid, yeah. Well, I mean, like, why wouldn't you just sell the gray PlayStation 5 anyways,
I don't know.
I don't understand. They're all selling like hotcakes, and there's a bunch of old people with a lot of expendable money. I would pay for the new UI stuff. But also, to that effect, sort it out for keeping it limited time, but also sort it out for the visual elements in the user interface, so it'll have an overlay that pays tribute to PS1 through 4, and it looks cool initially, but then the overlays are just completely static JPEG images that are just
okay, I see.
And it's just kind of like above and beyond, or like below, and it doesn't really mesh well with the user interface as well, you would think, but it mimics the sounds. So if you want your PS5 to sound like a PS2 and just have those like,
no, really?
Yeah.
Man, I got to do PS2. I love the PS2.
Dude. It's PS2 for me. PS3 sounds so muted because it was the XMB, right? So it went
the ticks.
So you can barely hear it, but PS2 is just fully like that Meridian type sound, and PS4 also. It just sounds like a PS4 again, but it just sounds like a couple years ago. So yeah, awesome. Keep it up to Sony for making that stuff, but also sort it out is not that great, and also keep it permanent. So.
Yeah. Hoeg, if you would pick any of these PlayStation themes, 1 through 4, which one would you pick?
Well, I've seen the 1 theme, so I like the 1 intro the best. I would not want like just a PlayStation 1 like cover at the top of my interface. So I think I like the cubes from the PlayStation 2 the best as the interface. But I'd probably pick the PlayStation 1 startup.
Boot up, yeah. That's a legendary boot up.
See, the cubes are all static, though, in this menu thing. It all just looks like kind of fuzzy and everything. So
I hear you. I'm disinclined to get too invested in it anyway because of the limited time. To me, the limited time notion says, all right, I either shouldn't get invested in it, so I don't care what you do, because it's not going to be something that you put your resources in. Or on the other side, if I do get invested in it, then you're going to take it away. So I am disinclined in like multiple directions from actually engaging with this particular product.
That's a good defense mechanism. Yeah.
So
that's what I always tell my girlfriends. They're like, you're going to leave me anyway, so I'm not going to get attached to you anyway. So
I agree with you on kind of sorted out Sony. I wish that you put in the resources and time to think about how this should look. Ideally with some dynamism in those UI elements and moving the background images around. But I felt this way about the PlayStation 5 for a long time. Like you haven't done some of the easy stuff in terms of figuring out how this stuff should look when I'm highlighting a game and things like that. And you could make it look a lot better. So this doesn't surprise me exactly, but I'm not super enthused about it.
Yeah. Cool. Great one. I'm definitely going to download that after we get through this episode, though. PS2 theme sounds. Oh, I'm so about that. That's good stuff.
That's the thing. Like, I don't like the overlay, but the audio is perfect.
Yeah,
like, I wish there was a way I could just fucking turn off the overlay and just make my PS5 sound like a PS2, and that's all I need. I mean, the PS5 UI is fine at this point. I've already gotten used to it, and I kind of like it. It's a good way to navigate your library at the very least, and they have like little folders in it that I started to create too. But yeah. It sounds so good, though.
It's so good. All right, boys. Time for Keep It Up. The exact opposite. Stuff we're pleased with in gaming. I'm going to go first because mine is also the same as this write-in right here. This is from JPick. Howdy, Summoners. My Keep It Up for this week is Capcom. Out of the blue, Dino Crisis and Resident Evil Director's Cut are now listed for sale on the PlayStation Store after previously only being available through the PlayStation Premium catalog. It's not clear to me why they changed their mind, but I welcome it nonetheless. This is something I complained about for a long time.
Yeah.
Long time when they put Resident Evil Director's Cut on there, like last year or the year before that. Couldn't get it, couldn't buy it. I have premium right now for when they did Dino Crisis, but I wish I could have just bought the game. But we complained, someone heard us, and now we can thankfully just buy those games. I'm so happy about it. So no trophies though, which is still very annoying, but at least I can buy and own those games now. So I'm very happy about that. I'll take what I can get. Hoeg.
I think that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a small victory that it means a lot to me. So I'm happy about that. Now, Hoeg, what about you, man? Anything you're pleased with right now?
I like that. It sounds a little veiled. Like, are you happy with anything, Lawyer?
Are you happy? Some gamers are always miserable. I can never tell.
I think it's been a fantastic year for games.
Me too.
Honestly. And the people that say that it hasn't been, I don't think are getting out enough in the video game space. I can say the AAA has maybe not been as grand as it usually is this particular year, but there's so much good stuff out there. I think I'm ultimately going to come down again with like RGG. The stuff I've loved this year has been these kind of offbeat role-playing games like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I'm super looking forward to whatever it is, like a pirate. I can't remember what they named it. But next year, and now playing Lost Judgment, which I had kind of skipped for a couple of years. I just love the way that they make games and their stories, and I want to see them keep doing it. And so that's what I really love right now, even if Lost Judgment might be pretty late to the party.
Yeah. Well, Hoeg, I don't think you have to fear about them ever stopping, because it sure as hell doesn't feel like they're ever going to stop. They're going to keep on going, baby.
It does feel good to like their products because you don't have a long time to wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're eating good right now with RGG.
It's been hard being a Final Fantasy fan,
All right. Gene, what about you, man? Anything that you're happy with right now?
Keep it up again to Sony, and jumping off of what you said of Resident Evil and Dino Crisis, awesome stuff. Just overall, Sony with the PlayStation Classics catalog, I think it's kind of underrated in terms of how good they've actually been doing in terms of making the classic catalog fairly robust and diverse. It was Astrobot that really clued me in on it. Where when you play Astrobot and you're like, oh my god, all these fucking games aren't accessible, and then you look in the store and it's like, wait a minute, I could just buy Parappa the Rapper right now for the PS4. Mr. Mosquito is on there. That's insane.
Legend of Dragoon's on there.
Legend of Dragoon. Art the Lad, fucking Jet Moto. Jet Moto also has trophy support.
I've been playing G Police. I miss Signosis.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. G Police. The original Hot Shots Golf, and of course you got your Patapon and your Loco Rocos, and it's like
two games I always mix up.
Yep.
Thank you, Astrobot, for maybe figuring that out for me.
Yeah, but I think Sony has done actually a very, very commendable job in quietly improving what's available on the PS5, at least digitally. Obviously I wish, I'm a physical head, so I wish that some of these games, I love a Parappa the Rapper PS4 that's not Japan only, right? I think I think they only released it in Japan. But other than, my personal gripes about physical media, you could just load up that's what I've been doing. I've just been buying up all these PS Classics, and I'm going to plug in my digital anniversary edition and just load that up with every single PlayStation Classic game I could have and just make it the ultimate PlayStation gaming device, or at least to the point that I can make it now. Really the ultimate PlayStation gaming device is the original launch PS3, the one that can play every single PS1, 2, and 3 game. That is the ultimate. But the PS5 is actually kind of coming up from behind as being kind of the second best one. Obviously PS5 and PS4 gives a great advantage. The PS6 is going to be a beast of backwards compatibility if it has a PS4, PS5, and PS6 going on there on top of all these catalogs. So yeah, good job, Sony, for making a lot of these games available. It's not they could be doing a lot more, and it'd be nice to have English releases of games that we just never got, like for example the Boku no games.
That's just what I was thinking of too.
The Boku no Natsuyami games. If you can, it obviously it'll take a lot of work to translate that or even port it over. But they're doing more than the bare minimum. and I feel like that Sony should be commended for that. So keep it up, PlayStation. You're actually not doing a bad job.
Yeah, we are harsh on a lot of game companies, but we got to praise them too when they do great stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm very happy to hear about that. Yeah, it's Sly Cooper 2 and 3 coming out soon.
Yeah,
later this month. I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah, I can just play Thieves Raccoonus like whenever I want now. I have that too. Wipeout Omega Collection. That already has Wipeout HD 2048 and Wipeout Fury. Fucking the PlayStation Plus catalog's already started with Mark of Kree. Which is a very underrated and overlooked action game that nobody copied and everyone should. So already Sony started off on an interesting foot, and they're only getting better. I got Fantavision, for fuck's sake,
Nice.
I do like when they put them in the store. I think I agree with the original commentator on this, which is that it's nice to see them kind of get released from only the subscription service. Because I do like to spend the $5 or the $10 or whatever it is, and get that G Police and get these various other things. And I've been picking up games from the PlayStation era and the Vita era and various things, and playing them on my PlayStation 5 is great. So yeah, I can stand behind that. I do hate that some of those are still kind of locked. Obviously, the PlayStation 3 has continued to be a problem for figuring out how to get those things kind of unlocked in various ways. I don't like the streaming solution, but I do like that we see them pop into the store from time to time, and I like that I can play the whole Siphon Filter series through.
Mr. Mosquito has fucking trophies, for fuck's sake. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's so good. So good.
Like, trophies and achievements didn't even exist when Mr. Mosquito was new, And now in 2024, I can get a trophy for stinging the young girl in her bedroom. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've talked about this 100 times, Gene, but I just wish Nintendo would take notes in that department. Put some trophies or whatever in their old games or something like that.
Oh man,
let me buy them particularly.
Dude, yeah.
I would lose my mind.
Yeah, I am becoming a trophy person. Thanks to me being adjacent to people like Colin, and the PlayStation Network. But oh my god, yeah! If they added trophies for Super Mario Bros. 1 even, or 2 or
Zelda, any of the Zelda games,
any of the Zelda games, dude, I'll play the shit out of them over and over again. I'll be like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna complete Mario and Zelda. No questions asked.
I do like it. You might get your wish if they need another 6 months on the Switch 1. It's what they do to bridge the gap. I really like the World Championship game, but like that's just taking their old games and saying, what if we timed them?
What if they just never put out a Switch 2 for like another 3 years or something?
Oh my god, Gene, don't even say that. We need content for punching up.
They've done such a good job.
Like, fuck you, here's Twilight Princess remade again. And it's a lot better, But to me, the Twilight Princess, those games really are ones, just like we were talking about with Epic Mickey, that will get a significant bump from being rescued from older technological solutions. And I would love to see those. I think a lot of people would, which is why Nintendo's not giving them to us. They like to be just a little bit trolly. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy that PlayStation is now giving us so much more now. But, I have to be thankful, There's no gray version of the Nintendo Switch, If they just put out a fucking Nintendo Switch that had the gray and purple of the Super Nintendo, it's a wrap, baby.
Little purple Joy-Cons on the side.
Yeah, some purple Joy-Cons or a little purple stripe in the back or whatever to make it look like the power reset buttons. It's game already, but they're not doing that. PS4, at least PS5, it's a limited edition. I don't know. These fucking companies just give us so little. So.
Gene, monkey's paw with that. I agree with that idea, but I could see Nintendo being like, you know what, we're going to do it for every console up to the Wii. So they're like, we're going to have an NES one, we're going to have a Super Nintendo one, an N64 one, we're going to have a GameCube one. And so people like us are going to be like, oh shit, which one do I buy? And people like Gene will probably be like, well, I'll buy all of them. So
I was going to say that you're probably wrong, but then they did just release keychains that actually have hardware, like legitimate Nintendo hardware and technology within them, and you fucking bought them, so yeah.
Shout out to Dustin, gave this to me,
dude. If they came out with a fucking Super Nintendo that had the Nintendo colors, that red and gray, I guess I'll buy that.
Forget
too.
about it. Yeah, forget about it
too.
Damn you, Nintendo.
I'm ready for Switch 2. It's going to be great.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to your content on your show on it.
We're very excited. I mean, I've been ready for Switch 2 for like 5 years. So
yeah, I've been ready for Switch 2.
Let's get that out here.
I've been ready for Switch 2 since Xenoblade 3, definitely. Or no, Bayonetta 3 and Xenoblade 3, I think both came out around the same time. But it was definitely Xenoblade 3 I didn't mind because it's an RPG.
Right.
Bayonetta 3 I minded
action
hardcore,
game.
where I was like, yo,
I think
they needed more than the Switch could give.
I think the Link's Awakening release was when I decided,
bad,
dude.
Bring me the Switch 2.
It's choppy.
And Echoes of Wisdom. It's like, how is this happening? How is this happening, guys? Come on.
Yeah, Echoes of Wisdom makes me mad because one of the things I thought when I bought that was surely they fixed their engine from Link's Awakening. They wouldn't just re-release it. And I think it is better, but it still is annoying enough often enough that it's bothersome.
It's still not acceptable, I would say. Yeah. You should at least have a 30 frame rate cap in that game.
Yeah, and Nintendo's always
an option at least.
I mean, that's how you know that even Nintendo is reaching the end of the Switch. In that, like fucking Super Princess Peach Showtime, you know, that the performance in that was horrendous too. Yeah, which is why I never finished it. But and you know, again, I'm the person who doesn't really care about performance, but Peach Showtime's performance was so bad I never finished it. But Nintendo games are usually good about, you know, fucking Mario Odyssey
usually really good.
60 frames, you know. So Nintendo games are usually good about they care about performance, and I think they're just at the end at wit's end with the Switch now. They can't do it, you know.
They got a lot out of it.
Make the games
they sure did.
Make, you know.
Yeah, they sure did. All right, this is from Austin Abbott. Keep it up, Grinding Gear Games. Path of Exile 2 had its big reveal last week, and it was one of the best presentations I've ever seen in a textbook example of how a company should communicate to their players. They feel like people who care about their product. As a person who got into PoE last year after being disappointed in Diablo 4, this seems like the next evolution in the genre. I'm beyond excited and can't wait to play it next week. Are any of you boys checking it out now? Have a wonderful day. I will play PoE 2. I don't know if I'll play when it's early access, which it's going to release as first. But I will definitely play PoE 2 when it's properly out. At least I played some of the first game, and it's very good. But if any of you don't know about PoE, it is a very overwhelming game to hop into. I feel like if you're going to play PoE, you got to do some homework first to understand things, because there's a lot going on in this game. It is a very hardcore ARPG.
And my understanding is 2 is designed to be maybe a little bit less crunchy than 1.
But what do you mean, like in terms of combat wise, or like
less figuring out mathematical equations?
Yeah, it's probably a little more streamlined, I would say, from what I understand. But I am
not the world's biggest ARPG gamer, but I did get deeply into Diablo 4 and only recently kind of bounced off of it with the Vessel of Hatred. So I am looking for another ARPG to kind of take my time up, but I don't love the kind of end game min-maxing like state of ARPG game fandom at that level. Like that's not how I like to engage with the game. So my understanding is that this game, Path of Exile, is more focused on that even than Diablo 4 is. So it's probably not built for me, which is fine. Lots of games aren't. That is A-okay. But I will check it out.
Yeah, I think it has like a 25-hour campaign, Hoeg. And the game's free, by the way.
Yeah, it's supposed to have, in early access, it's going to have 3 acts, and it's going to have 6 acts ultimately, I think. And I agree with the commentator talking about this company going out there with transparent communication. I will always advocate for that. I think that's the best way to sell anything, including video games. And I think a lot of publishers and hardware manufacturers are too clandestine about too much. I understand trade secrets and wanting to keep certain aspects of marketing in your control, but I do very much like the transparency and communications of folks like the ones that are making Path of Exile.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks great. I'm going to check it out. Gene, do you have any interest in Path of Exile 2?
No, not really. My interest in ARPGs just really stops at Diablo, and that's about it. So, cool. and even then, I'm not really that into Diablo that much anymore. So, you know, cool. It's just certain game concepts. You know, like I'm good on Diablo after I played Diablo 2 and 3. I don't really need a Diablo 4.
No, sure.
And that's kind of honestly where I'm at with Monster Hunter. Like, I've been playing Monster Hunter for 15 years. So it's like I'm not really that excited for Monster Hunter Wilds, even though it looks amazing. But honestly, as I played the demo, I'm like, yeah, it's more Monster Hunter. I mean, they changed the flow or whatever. So I don't know. I'm kind of at that point where it's like certain game concepts
you can get to a point with games.
For me now.
Yeah, exactly. Where you can get to a point where you turn around and say, "What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I playing this thing?" And certainly with a game like Monster Hunter, Wilds is going to sell like hotcakes. It's probably going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But you might be at the point in your gaming career where you say, "I've done this 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to be wowed by the new ideas. I would rather do something else." And I think that happens all the time in lots of different hobbies. Yep. Not just gaming. It can happen with movies or television shows or anything else that you might otherwise enjoy. But I think that does come from a certain level of seasoning that maybe not everybody has in games. And so we get these different kind of voices and feelings when games are released. Like, Gene, you've said you've been playing Monster Hunter for 15 years. Lots of people will have, but lots of people will have not. And lots of people will see Wilds as essentially Monster Hunter 2 because Worlds was such a big deal to them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're right that I am seasoned, as you so euphemistically said.
Well, we're old fogies. That doesn't feel right.
We are. I mean, I had a little fantasy last year where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to compete in Evo. I'm going to get good at Street Fighter like I used to be, and I'm gonna compete in Evo and achieve that dream, right? And then I actually started to sit down and play Street Fighter and like train in it. And I realized I don't want to fucking play this shit. I don't want to play this shit right now. I don't want to play Street Fighter again. I've been playing Street Fighter for 30 years. 30 years, right?
Yeah, man. I was in the Blockbuster World Championships in whatever year that was, playing Sonic the Hedgehog and NBA Jam.
Me too. You and me, Rick. We are the Blockbuster World Championship veterans. I played that shit too back in.
That's a while back, Gene.
Yeah, I played that shit too back in the Blockbuster on Guam. All the way in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, hoping that I would be the world's biggest gamer someday, and I just never left that Blockbuster.
Do you guys remember what year that was? I don't really remember it.
I remember the games. I remember it was Sonic the Hedgehog and NBA Jam and Virtual, is it Racer? What's the racing game on Sega?
93? Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
1993, yeah. 1994. Yeah. Blockbuster Video Game World Championship. NBA Jam. That's right. Yeah. They even had a special NBA Jam Blockbuster version, I think, right?
Cool.
I don't know.
I wish I got to do that.
Racing.
There you go. Yeah. Blockbuster World Video Game Championship disc. There's a NBA Jam cartridge for Genesis.
Damn.
Just to assuage you of seeing me in the finals or anything, I did not make it there.
That's cool though. I wish I got to do that. I didn't even know about it though. I was 6, I guess, when it took place. I don't remember any of it. But it sounds awesome. I'm glad you guys did that. That's sick.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh yeah, that's cool. All right, this is from Neo JD.
Oh, did Dr. Disrespect win actually? The Blockbuster?
Yes, he's the 2-time.
Is he really that guy? That's not fake at all?
I don't think so.
Is a dog actually the 1994 World Championship?
It's important information.
I don't know. Doesn't look like it. No, it's not.
In the meantime,
it's just a meme. Fucking.
This is Neo JD wrote in, said, "Keep it up, Shuhei Yoshida. I don't know where you're going, but wherever it is, they'll be lucky to have you." Yes, Shuhei Yoshida is leaving PlayStation after 30 years. Was it? He's been there since the very beginning. If you've been in the PlayStation ecosystem, you probably know who he is. He's done a ton of different things in that company. He's an awesome guy. He's been doing recently kind of like, I believe, with like indies, working with a lot of the indie publishers and stuff like that. So yeah,
I think of him as their indie liaison.
Yes.
But I know he has had a number of roles.
Yes, he is a legend at that company. So we wish him all the best wherever he goes. Whoever's going to get him or whatever he's going to do is lucky to have him. All righty. Gene, let's talk about Mouthwashing. Now, I know this is a game you don't want to spoil it at all because it's a lot of narrative and kind of stuff like that. I don't really know anything about this game, so we're going to try to keep it very light. So it might be a little short, but let's just talk about it a little.
Yeah, this is just basically my segment where I plead to all of you to buy and play in Mouthwashing. It is at most a 4-hour game. Really, it's a 3-hour narrative experience. It is like a walking simulator, but there's a lot of shit that happens as you're walking, and you do have to solve some puzzles during it. So I'm just really kind of describing the gameplay. Don't look up any narrative story. Don't even look at the fucking Steam page. Don't look at the Steam page either. Just go into this story.
I gotta buy it, Gene.
Huh?
I gotta buy it, Gene.
You gotta buy it. Go into this completely raw. Don't even know. You need to be confused from the very first second all the way up until the credits roll. But I will say that it is beaten. It has beaten Metaphor as what I think is the best writing in a video game of the year. I think it is probably the best written game of the last 5 years, if not even 10 years. The character work is brilliant. And I said this on Twitter, and this is the most I'll say about the story, is that I have never encountered characters that made me feel so disgusted and hateful as what I encountered in Mouthwashing.
Wow.
It's a different type of horror experience where you end up. Even Asmongold praised it, where he says it was. God, what did he say? He said that it was an unflinching look at what evil is like. Asmongold.
Doesn't seem like his kind of game.
It's not, but he played it, and he said, "Yeah, really great experience that shows the potential in storytelling when you don't pull punches and respect the complexity of evil." I gotta say, that's a really good way to sum up the game. That's a pretty good way to sum up the game without letting anyone know what it's about or what happens in it. But it does have a PS1 aesthetic. It will run on. It's only on PC, and it will run on any PC. And it has some really cool visual effects. I think that people will really enjoy. Just like visually, in terms of like what it does in survival horror is really interesting. But it really is the narrative that brings it home.
Yeah, I mean, best written games. I got questions. Alan Wake 2.
I think it's much better than Alan Wake 2.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Much better than Guardians of the Galaxy.
This is hard for me to believe, Gene.
Yeah, I think it's better than Metaphor. I almost wanted to go back to the presses and tell my people at the Post, hey, I'm changing my ranking for the best games of the year, because I think Mouthwashing should be number one. But I'm keeping the Metaphor number one only because it has so much gameplay in it, and I really do value like so much gameplay in it, which is why Rebirth is still is still going to be placed very high, because there's just so much video game in it and really good video game in it. But Mouthwashing, in terms of the story, it is the best writing I've seen, and it's only
high praise.
It's only 2.5 hours long.
I'm ready.
Brad, you muted.
Sorry, I just bought it, Gene. So there you go. You sold it.
Yep.
It's very cheap. Also,
it's a very good stream experience. Yeah, it's only like what 11, $12 bucks. That's a good streaming experience. Don't let the chat spoil you. And it's become kind of a viral hit. There's a whole fandom, a lot of fan art being made of the characters, which is in and of itself has become very, very controversial. But you're not gonna everything's fucking controversial. Everything. I know.
Come on, people just relax.
We're controversial right now. We don't even know what we said that's controversial, but we definitely are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What I say right now is probably controversial right now, and there's probably a whole debate about it already going on Reddit about it. But
Gene wasn't even here for me complaining about Rebirth. So,
yeah.
Yeah, but Mouthwashing. Don't even ask why it's called Mouthwashing. That's part of the surprise too.
Say no more, Gene.
Yep.
Say no more.
I will say it has very few characters, and that's why it has extremely, extremely good character work.
Okay. This is from Ethan Barcelos. Hello, Summoners. Gene, on the recommendation of you, Dustin, and Jaffe, I checked out Mouthwashing. What a gem of an experience. Because you recommended it, I had you on my mind during Swanson's monologue, as it felt like something Swansea's something you would say and or / resonate with. I wish more people would give this game a chance. While the gameplay elements and mechanics are limited in innovation and scope, the forced interactivity, first-person perspective, and art style are things that could only be accomplished in this medium and highlight what makes video games so special.
Yes.
I'd love to hear you expound upon what you think this makes Mouthwashing special. Thanks for all the content you have, and have a good one. Yeah, we talked about all that. I don't want to know more about this game, though, but you've sold it very well.
I will agree that it is one of those games that can only be told as a video game, even though there's not like a lot of gameplay mechanics. I will say one criticism, and this is not a spoiler, when they do try to introduce like more like gaming mechanics, it's not like the best. But fortunately, those segments really like end really quickly. So even before you even start to really complain about them, you're just kind of done with it already. So, and then you're already on to the next story beat whatsoever. So, that makes me excited for what their next game could be as they're learning how to make more gaming games. But this is definitely, this was a game made by 7 people total.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That is something I noticed with indie games, is that as someone that loves narrative indie games, sometimes they do feel like they have to add in a little gameplay, and they aren't always great at it.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
I'm not going to judge that too harshly.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so the great thing about Mouthwashing is that it doesn't have too much of that. There are only like one, if at most 2 segments that are like that, where it's like, if that wasn't a regular game, then that would probably be not like a great part of the game. But at least in here, it all ties together thematically to what's going on in the story anyways, right?
Gene, did you play a game called, I want to say, While We Wait Here?
Oh yeah, I played that too. I did not like it nearly as much.
That's one of those that I think of as having game elements that are not great.
Yeah, I did not. I did play that one based on Jaffe's recommendation, and I completely disagree with him. I don't think the game is all that great. I think it's okay. I actually, While We Wait Here is about a diner that's in the middle of nowhere. Actually, what's funny is that I actually found the dining experience where he's just preparing like a cheeseburger and like a beer. Like I actually found that stuff pretty compelling, and I actually would probably just play a game where I'm just first person grilling burgers all day. So.
I love those games with names I can never remember exactly correctly. While We Wait Here, there's another game that came out that had a very similar sound this year that I really liked, where you wind up going through a haunted Japanese forest and making friends with a dead girl. And it's something like While I Wait, or I'm Already Here, or something like that. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I know this is good content. Yeah, just hang on.
Mouthwashing sticks out because, why the fuck is a game called Mouthwashing?
It is, right?
Yeah.
Well, I got to say, it's gotten all of this viral credibility. It's gotten credibility from Eugene. Any game that can get all of this kind of feeling from I'm 2 or 3 hours long and it's all my writing and characters immediately intrigues me, because that's really, really hard to do.
Yep. I think they pulled off a really, really hard trick to do, and they nailed it. By the end the credits rolled, I was like, holy fucking shit! I'm gonna be thinking about this game for years and years and years, and that's where I'm at right now. Where I can't stop thinking about the game. I'm just obsessed.
All right,
with it. So,
nice.
I understand why there's a fandom that's propped up around it, that's become viral, and also problematic too. So, because I will say that it's a horror game, but the game gets very, very dark.
Stop. No more.
Yeah, that's it.
No more.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about this briefly, but I'll just give you one chance to talk about it again, I guess. Can't even speak right now. Badly Brave wrote in, "Hey, Gene, just finished Mouthwashing. I can't wait to read your interview with Wrong Organ. In a genre like the indie horror that is so oversaturated, there seems to be an endless barrage of good titles of similar nature that get lost in the crowd. Mm-hmm. What do you think has attracted so many people to this instead of other PS1 style walking sim horror titles? While this game is exceptional, it feels so much more niche than most, like something you'd find on itch.io instead of the Washington Post article. Have a great day."
I think it's a story. I
was going to say, I think it's the writing from what you've told me.
I think it really is just down to it's not the graphics, obviously. Even While We Wait Here has a very like old school type graphic style too, and that's what attracted me. I was like, okay, if this is another game like that, then and Jaffe was telling me, they do all kinds of interesting storytelling tricks, which they do, but the themes and the writing and what they explore just don't hit as hard. Again, it's hard for me to talk about Mouthwashing without talking about specific things, but I just think that the themes are just simpler to understand and just hit harder, and it's just less complicated. But as Asmon Gold said, it is a complex portrait of evil or whatever. So there are many layers of it, but it can be taken simply or taken in many complex ways. And I think that's what resonates with so many people is that when you play it, even if you miss some of the things that the story might be telling you, and it's not a complicated story. Again, I think that's why it's resonating so strong. Metaphor is very, very complicated. It takes like half an hour at least to talk about the elevator pitch of Metaphor. Whereas Mouthwashing, I mean, I can't talk about it because this is going to be a hard article for me to write because it's such a short experience, and I have to write around a lot of what happens in the game and what it even is about. But so that's all I can say is really, what Asmon Gold said. It's a complex portrait of evil, and for me, it is characters. It has characters that you will feel strongly about by the end of it. So.
Cool. I look forward to it. Also, I was able to find the name of the game I was trying to figure out, which is Last Time I Saw You. You can see why these all mix together in my head.
The Last of Us, and the Before of Us, and the Days Gone, and the Days Before, and and While We Wait Here. They're all trying to sound like fucking poems.
They are. It's got that Sundance quality. Last Time I Saw You is a hand-drawn game where you're a kid in like the 80s in Japan, and you've got a Nintendo system, and you might or might not meet a dead girl in a Japanese forest. It's a whole thing. But I do recommend it. It's a good time. It is not the same kind of PlayStation 1 aesthetic we're talking about with these other games. And I tend to agree with Gene on While We Wait Here. I think it's a little bit too obvious what it's doing too early.
Yeah.
In the way that I don't like, the Black Mirror that you're way in front of kind of thing. But if that's not the case with Mouthwashing, I will get excited.
I played While We Wait Here afterwards, and I was like, I know where this is going. I know what this game is about. And then once I finished it, I was like,
right.
That's exactly what the game was about. It was fairly on the nose. And with Mouthwashing, it just hits way more effectively and harder, and does it a lot more cleanly. I feel like you might not see what's coming. So,
okay. All right, boys, let's end the show with some questions and comments from the audience, as we always do. If you want to write into this show for any of the things I've read out, I post a thread every Saturday calling for your submissions around the early afternoon on the Pacific Coast time. So keep an eye out for that. I usually leave it up for 24 hours, so you got some time to write in. So yeah, if you want to write in, look out for that thread on our Patreon. All right, this is from Nikolai. Is it just me, or is Game Pass Day 1 already dead? At this point, first-party games are not available to Game Pass subscribers on the first day, but rather 7 days later. They sugarcoat it as early access, but really you have to pay full price to access the game on day 1. Am I wrong? So this is something that they've done for a lot of games, I guess. They did it for Starfield and stuff like that. A lot of big AAA games. I guess in Xbox space have kind of done this, but there has been early access. And I guess some people, or a lot of people, have been feeling left out in the cold. They thought they were getting the day 1. And I guess you are getting the official release date, but the games are out sometimes 5 days or something like that before.
I hadn't seen a 7 day. I don't know what game that might be.
I don't know about 7 days. I'm not sure.
Jones?
Maybe that or Avowed will be. I'm not quite sure which ones are going to be.
But in broad strokes, I agree with the sentiment here, which is that for a long time now, that day 1 on Game Pass has been kind of at least a little bit fictional because of these early access passes. The only thing I would object to is at least the ones I think I have purchased. I want to say Horizon and games like that. They are lower priced, kind of little. You own Game Pass. If you want to get it on the earlier access field, you only have to pay $20 or that kind of thing. So I agree that I think the sales pitch is not false advertising as we think about it in legal terms, but it is at least a little bit misleading. And I think this extends to the gaming industry on the whole, right? Early access and day one are probably not great terms for what's actually happening here. You see review sites kind of objecting to embargoes that go through day one instead of the early access period because the company's collecting money at that point in time. And realistically, that first day that you can purchase the whole product at some price is the release date of the game. And then everything else is later access. And I think Xbox is using that to kind of operate in the gray area. I don't love that, but I never really thought that the Game Pass pitch, at least for me, was just getting their first party studio games on the first day anyway. So it doesn't bother me too much, but I agree with the sentiment that it's not as 100% honest as it could be.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Gene? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't. I kind of see that. Yeah, it's just people aren't. It's just a result of Game Pass strategy just not being the end all be all. You know, it's not the future of video game retail. It's not the future of how video game subscriptions will work. I just think the less we hear of it, that's just Microsoft kind of slowly putting less emphasis on it, and now it's just more like this is an Xbox, and they're just games everywhere, you know. So yeah, it's I don't know. Day one Game Pass failed because they're not making games. You know,
it has been a rough year.
They're not putting out games enough where day one Game Pass matters at all. You know,
sure. Even a lot of their games aren't on it. Like, you know, all the expansions they do aren't on it, which I guess I understand. Like Vessel of Hatred's not on it. War Within wasn't on it.
But we got Hellblade 2 day one.
Yes, you know? We did get Hellblade 2.
Can't fucking wait to continue Senua's Saga, right?
The Warcraft 1,
Hellblade 2 is my worst game of the year.
The worst game of the year that I played, maybe, yeah. But yeah, like Warcraft 1, 2, 3 Reforged aren't on there either. So it's just a lot of games still aren't on there that I would expect to be now that they are in the Xbox fold. But I don't know. Just the way it is for right now. We'll see how things evolve, though.
Yeah. Indiana Jones coming soon.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. I'll definitely be playing that.
Early access.
Yeah. I won't be playing that, but I'll be playing when it's day one Game Pass, I guess.
Yeah. It's next week, right?
It's next week.
It's
December,
like the 9th. Yeah.
Yeah, December 9th or 10th.
Like that.
But isn't it crazy that the PS5 Pro, well, who knows now, because the PS5 Pro also sucks too. But there is a possibility that the best version of the Xbox game Indiana Jones will be on the PS5 Pro.
Oh, like a console version? Yeah.
Probably. At least on console, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But who knows? Right. It could just suck ass like Star Wars Outlaws and fucking Silent Hill 2,
good.
You know?
Yeah, it could. Who knows?
and you know, and to be clear, it's not every PS5 Pro game. It's only a select few. But that's Star Wars Outlaws and Silent Hill 2 both screwing up, and Alan Wake 2 also kind of.
Yeah, it's more than it should be. It's very annoying.
For that price, you'd think Sony would be defending their product a little bit more. And I know it's on the developers, but you'd think Sony would at least have a squad of helpers on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because ultimately, imagine if you're the kind of person who only like wants to play Star Wars Outlaws, right? And then you bought a PS5 Pro. It's crazy that you spent $700 to downgrade your experience.
Yeah,
that's what it is so far. You know,
and usually the hardware manufacturer would say, "Okay, well that's going to reflect poorly on us. Let's go help these guys out."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully they are helping all these devs out. Because there's some great examples.
Bloober, God knows, Bloober team needs help. You know, they may have traced within the lines well, but let's not forget this is fucking Bloober team. They barely know how to put together a game themselves. You know, so
I thought I was harsh on Bloober.
I mean, they shipped the game out and they made a good game, but ultimately this is still Bloober, and they're still kind of a wreck in terms of like technical terms. You know, so
yeah. All right, this is from Ryan Gerson. Hello to Brad, the California heartthrob, Hoeg, the Hoagie, and Gene Park, your Asian garden snake in my gopher hole.
Why did I gotta be Asian, bro?
This is a general game design question I'd love to get your opinions on. I've been playing Nine Souls, and it's reaffirmed to me that the Metroidvania subgenre is my favorite, and dare I say, the best genre around. The best in class like Hollow Knight, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Nine Souls, and Blasphemous showcase why. They have a wonderful mix of non-linearity exploration to reward ratio, secrets, puzzles, fun, combat mechanics, and wonderful worlds to explore. Why isn't this genre more liberally taken from? The new God of War, Tomb Raider, and Control are some examples, but it feels like this flow of design is way underutilized. Why do you all think? Am I a loon? Am I onto something? Thanks for making my Tuesdays wonderful. Okay.
Well, I would never call anybody a loon, even if they refer to me as a sandwich. Yeah. But the one thing I would add to their kind of list here is that I think that the Souls games take more from Metroidvanias than this person is kind of giving them credit for. I know it's not the same kind of equipment pass, but the overall flow of finding a new area, adding that shortcut, changing the way that your environment operates is to me similar to that kind of environmental exploration aspect of a Metroidvania game. And so I think it does live most prominently in those Souls games right now. Mm-hmm. And those are obviously very, very popular with a lot of people. Yeah. So I think Metroidvanias are welcome in gaming. Lost Crown is one of my favorites of the year, so it's a good call out from the commenter. But I think Metroidvania as a concept of expanding environments, however that is, whether it's through equipment or through shortcuts and other aspects, is alive and well in games and is being adopted in places like they mentioned with God of War. Mm-hmm. Tomb Raider has been at least dormant for a little while, but it was in the Revival series as well.
Yeah, like Jedi Survivor has stuff like that. You can only reach when you have like certain powers. There are examples of it, but like on a huge AAA game, it's really hard to make that have that amount of space be as rewarding as like a Metroidvania because they're so massive. Like Elden Ring does a really good job at it, but it is very hard to do, especially the game that's very huge and complex like an Elden Ring. So I think it's just something it's harder to optimize that perfect amount of space like you can in a Metroidvania in a 3D game most of the time, but there are examples of it, like you were saying, like from software games and God of War and stuff like that. You see it, but it's just the kind of thing of like, I don't know, you want meaningful rewards at a good pace, and you want that sense of progression, like can only get here when you get the certain item. So it is an interesting thing, but I do see it in a lot of games. Maybe not exactly the same amount as a Metroidvania, but you see elements of Metroidvania in games all the time. So I still think it's
in a lot of indies. I mean, certainly in a lot of indies because it's a good use of their resources.
Yeah.
For the most part, people are expecting Metroidvanias to be 2D, oftentimes pixel art. Yes. And so you get a lot of those in that space. It doesn't just have to be a 3D kind of translation.
Well,
so I think they're around.
Some people think Metroidvanias should be 2D only. So at this point,
I think one of my favorite Metroidvanias, one of my favorite Metroidvanias, I would say, is Batman: Arkham Asylum. So I'm going to disagree with that.
Metroid Prime. But that's a conversation again for another day. But Gene, what do you think about this? The implementing Metroidvania stuff into other games.
Well, I agree with the letter writer that Metroidvanias are an awesome genre, but I think it kind of goes back again to the season topic that Rick and I were talking about. I think Metroidvanias are amazing. I think they're some of the best games ever made. I'm kind of sick of them. I'm tired of playing them.
There's a million.
I realized this when I try to play Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which is a beautifully designed game. Awesome combat. Good. Everything about the combat that ticks my boxes. Parry system, combat flow, juggles, and everything like that. Awesome. I should love this game, and I do. I recognize it as good. I just don't want to play it right now. Nine Souls. Everyone kept telling me, our boy Fighting Cowboy kept telling me, Nine Souls is a sneaky game of the year. A lot of people hyped it up. I played it. Really good game. Again, it should be everything I want. Flashy, cool art style, and awesome hand-to-hand combat. I kind of don't want to play it right now. Hollow Knight, seminal classic, very well designed. I don't like Hollow Knight. I don't care about.
You specifically don't like it.
I don't like Hollow Knight.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I hate the art style. I fucking hate the art style of Hollow Knight, and there's no.
I can see how it would not be fun if you don't like it.
There's no really like way around that. In that, like, I like the game, but I think the art style is boring and dull, and it puts me to sleep. So I think I'm really at a point where Metroidvanias aren't really my thing, anymore, and I'm not really that excited. And especially since to everyone's point, so many other games incorporate elements of Metroidvania and exploration and backtracking, all the stuff that I enjoy, into so many other games. It's already in Dark Souls. It was in Batman Arkham. It is in fucking even people call Dragon Age Veilguard as having some Metroidvania like elements, because you need the party members' powers to be able to access, like, you need Lucanus's platform.
It's a very flat Metroidvania.
It is a very flat Metroidvania. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that calling it a Metroidvania is not really accurate or even a compliment toward it. But again, that just goes to show how many different elements of a Metroidvania are basically incorporated into so many other games that we already enjoy, that they don't necessarily have to be a Metroidvania. So I feel like I'm already being satisfied in that regard. Finding shortcuts and secrets and revisiting cool areas again. I get that already in so many different games already. So it's like,
I hear you.
But Metroid, I was signing for Metroid, Castlevania. Yeah.
Gene,
if you actually make a real Metroidvania game in one of those genres, then yes, I'll play those. But I think, to me, it's not a surprise why the genre sells so little. I think it's because we already get so many of those aspects in so many other more popular games, that the thought of playing it in a 2D space doesn't seem as attractive. And trust me, don't get me. I'll be the last person to talk shit about 2D games for sure. I'm just theorizing on why it's not as popular. So
what I would add to that is, and this happens with a lot of indie games and indie genres, roguelikes and deck builders and all sorts of games, I think it's a little bit hard to tell where the winners are, because there is that high volume of content in the genre.
Animal Well. Right? Animal Well is another one that was a clear winner for everybody else. I played that one. I didn't care. I don't care.
No, I don't like Animal Well either. But that to me is a different kind of, if it's a Metroidvania, it's more of that puzzle aimed Tunic style indie game that is just not my vibe most of the time.
Another game I didn't finish, Tunic, yeah.
But Gene, if you do ever feel the twinge and say, actually, I wake up this morning and I do feel like a Metroidvania, please do get a little farther in Lost Crown. I really do think it is the successor to like Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night. Like, it's that, at, if not exact level, it's in that ballpark.
Yeah.
You should try it if you at all feel like playing that kind of game.
I want to finish it because Prince of Persia is one of the most dearest IP to me. I repeat this all the time, but Jordan Mechner is the creator of Prince of Persia. He is the guy who made the first video game I ever played. So for me, the Prince of Persia series goes back really a long way. So I do have a personal obligation to finish the Lost Crown. So I will. And I do reckon, I think I'm more than halfway through with it. So I already know like how well all the levels like kind of feed into each other, and like the kind of the multiverse aspect of it that they have going on in there.
It just keeps opening up.
Yeah. It just keeps opening up, and they really play with different powers and the way the levels intersect with each other. Like, I see that. It's an excellently designed game. I should be counting it among my top 10. I just haven't finished it. So
that is okay. I would never force you to play something you don't feel like playing, but I think it is well worth the investment.
Yeah, well,
it was a big surprise to me.
Thanks for saying that. That might give me a little bit more push. So after I finish Persona 5, finally, probably. I can't not finish Persona 5. I'm too fucking far into it. I can't stop right now. Indiana Jones, I'm sorry, but this is like life or death for me right now. Like, I need to finish Persona 5. I'm tired of not finishing Persona 5. Once I get that done and I squeeze some Indiana Jones in, then I might go to Lost Crown soon.
Mm-hmm. All right. This is from Javen Mather. Questions for Hoeg and then the rest of you. Hoeg, what are your thoughts on the Ace Attorney games? As someone that practices law, are they cool or quirky to you? Obnoxious by extension to all of you? What's a unique line of work or walk of life you'd like to see gamified in some way? It'd be cool to use a system like the RE4 inventory management and puzzles, as well as a sim element for a game where you own a contracting company and have to build homes for outlandish characters, for example.
That's great. That's a great fucking idea, dude.
Yes.
You should try Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer. My girls love that one.
Where you need cards, right?
No, it's not. It's the expansion to the current one. I always forget the subtitles of these. The Animal Crossing on the Switch. But in answer to the commenter's question, I love the Ace Attorney series. In general, I really love visual novels. I love mysteries, and I love puzzle solving. But specifically to my family, my youngest daughter, adores this series. And before she could read, I would read out loud all of the characters to her, and it became a bonding thing between me and her. And now she asks we're on Miles Edgeworth Investigations right now.
Awesome.
And it's a fantastic series. You asked me how I liked it as a practitioner of law. A couple of disclaimers here. One, I'm not a litigator. I do not go to court. I am a transactional lawyer. If I'm in court or my client's in court, it's a bad day. But outside of that, I don't like it as a practitioner of law. It does not represent the practice of law in any reasonable fashion, whether that's how defendants come up on murder charges or how evidence is presented. You're not playing Ace Attorney because it's a great simulation of legal problems or legal problem solving. You're playing it because it's a mystery game, it's a detective type game, and you have logic puzzles about how evidence might apply in specific areas. But it's not about being a lawyer per se. So I like it despite of that, really.
Okay. What's something you'd want to see, I guess? Like a really random, everyday thing that you'd want to see turned into a game? Some sort of profession, I guess?
Like well, I have
Oh, go ahead.
I've been floating in my head some kind of board or card game that was based on contract negotiations, which I think would be a cool thing that you'd have to break down to not be as boring as it sounds, just from my description here. But I thought it could work either in casual settings or for something for law students in law schools, because one of the complaints I have about the legal schooling process in the United States is that it doesn't do a great job of training you to practice law. You might think it would because you spend 3 years there and you take the bar exam and you do all these things. After you get your bar degree, you are not any better than seemingly anybody off the street at doing what you're actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And I would love to see a gamified version of going through that process for young associates, law students, and the like.
What about you, Gene? Anything you could think of you'd like to see gamified?
I haven't, I'm not someone who's always thinking about, designing games. I never wanted to make my own game. But I have always had this idea. I don't know if this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly, but I've always wanted a visual novel. Again, of course, it's very easy to make, but a visual novel dating series on journalists. You get to choose the different kind of journalists that you want to date. They could be of all different genders, all different races, right? But they all have different beats, and so you get to they all have different personality types, and you get to learn about their beats. And each beat will lend to a different personality type or whatever. Kind of like dating different types of attorneys. The different specialties or whatever. So that's kind of like my
boring, Gene.
Huh?
We're all boring, Gene.
I think that's the issue. Is that we're we are Phoenix Wright makes attorneyship look fun and dramatic, and that's what my sister the Hoeg knows, but my sister is a U Michigan attorney, alum and attorney, and she loves the Phoenix Wright series. So yeah, I think pretty much every attorney I know who's familiar with it is like, oh yeah, totally, he's our hero.
It's so weird nowadays because I feel like there's a game for everything. There's like a sim for literally like every job, like Power Wash Simulator, and how awesome that game was. It's crazy. I feel like there's probably Garbage Man Simulator, all that kind of stuff. It's like, think about how cool Crazy Taxi is, and you're just a taxi driver. It's like, man, you can make something so mundane so fun. Yeah, I want to see like a Crazy Taxi version of being a garbage man or something. I don't know. Something unusual like that.
It'll be in a Yakuza game before you know it.
Yeah, or being a gardener or I don't know, something crazy like that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a Yakuza game.
So I'm replaying Red Dead 2 for the first time since ever. And I'm playing
Gene, what are you doing, man? You're all over the place again.
All over the place. I'm playing on PS5 right now because I never finished it on PS4. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Because I abandoned my run on PS4 to jump to Xbox One X all those years ago, and that's when I finished it. But again, I want the trophies for PlayStation Red Dead 2. But then there's an extensive like hunting tutorial at the beginning of the game that's so boring. But you realize, and like going through this again made me realize actually the hunting was the funnest part of the game for me. I actually didn't really care for the story or the set pieces. I really enjoyed Red Dead Redemption 2 as a hunting simulator. Just walking around and listening for the wildlife and checking tracks. And and shooting and skinning them in excruciatingly slow detail. So yeah, like it does remind me of like how there's just a sim for every game, but even Rockstar games try to be sims within their own games for various different activities. You can play Red Dead 2 as a poker player, and that's just a poker game sim now.
Yeah.
Hunting simulators is a genre that is a lot more popular than like the level of commentary that we do on it. Yeah.
Cabella's the classic.
It's got a lot of gamified elements. You can, tracking things and blood trails and all this other stuff. But
I mean, for fuck's sake, there was that game, that indie game Packing, where you're just packing.
Yeah,
your clothes, and they gamified that.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, now we're unpacking the clothes.
I'm sorry, unpacking. Yes, unpacking.
The sequel might be packing. I don't know, but it's unpacking right now.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, but thank you, Hoeg. Yes, unpacking.
I love indie games.
Yes, right. Yes. You do seem like you do seem very well versed in indie. So let me know how you like Mouthwashing. I'm interested to see how you guys feel about that. So
I also purchased it during the taping of this episode. So yeah, I will let you know.
I'll let you know, Gene. All right. This is from Guy Kotaku. Colin always says he hates when people say they rolled credits on a game. I've been rolling my eyes anytime someone said that way before Colin even mentioned it. I don't have a podcast to back me up. Anyways, it got me thinking, what other terms widely used by podcasters / game journalists irk you? Here's another one I find stupid. The moment-to-moment gameplay. And don't get me started with being part of the conversation. Have a nice show. All right. What are some phrases or terms game journalists, podcasters use?
I think my irritants are pretty normal, but one that maybe isn't is I don't like saying something is fun. I don't like that being a defining characteristic of a game, whether it's a video game or a board game. I don't think it's informative to me. And what I'm looking for from somebody that's already experienced a game is something that I can base my feelings on what they are saying. So saying something is fun is not useful. And this is an argument that I have pretty constantly with Travis at IGN on my other show at the Bitcast. But that's probably the biggest pet peeve that is unusual. The other ones are pretty normal. I hate all the comparisons to something being the souls of something being really hard version of whatever thing we're talking about.
Right.
And that's probably it. For the most part, I give a lot of leeway. It's a hard job. I don't envy anybody that has to review these things for me. And I talked about that a lot in the past. And so that's really where I would stick is I think fun is a crutch and it's not useful in a critical capacity.
I actually like fun, but I think you have to explain what's fun about it though. I think you can totally use the term fun, but yeah, you have to, you can't just say fun and that's it unless you've already explained that earlier on. But
yeah, I think I'm mostly referring to that, that I like it because it's fun kind of concept.
Yeah. I think that's a little too broad. It's like, what does that even mean kind of thing? But yeah, I don't have to think about that anymore because I don't have to write reviews anymore. So that's good. Let's see, Gene, anything you can think of that you're not too big of a fan of that people say maybe?
Well, we had a conversation recently where, a lot of grifters were thinking that, our poor Mr. Manning Plays got involved in that, where grifters thought that EA required reviewers to say Dragon Age Veilguard is a quote unquote return to form. when people saw that return to form was repeatedly said over and over in Dragon Age Veilguard reviews. And it's like, no, it's not that they were fed, talking points for that. It's just that video game writers are often very cliche. And,
I like that tweet, Gene. Didn't you say it's because we're boring? It's just the same phrase.
Yeah, because we're not great writers, and like I said, even I said it a couple of times too. So I'm including myself in that. But Return to Form is one, and everybody said that about Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which I don't really agree with, honestly. I think the campaign was just okay. But one that this is not like a big deal, and I don't think it's I don't necessarily call it bad writing, but one cliche that I get tired of hearing is, this is a masterclass. Which to me is like the other side of fun, where it's like, I don't know what that means. So you need to explain that more.
Yeah, anything that you can't interpret is less than useful in a critical context. Yeah. Although I want to, just based on what you said, Gene, I do want to raise a different one that isn't used by journalists so much, but I do hear a lot in the space, which is the term grifter. Right. Yes. So Gene just used it to call out people specifically that are causing outrage and making hay when they shouldn't be. And that's the proper usage. Grifter being the term to indicate that someone is doing something that is in bad faith, that is opposite or not suggestive of their true beliefs because they think it'll earn them money, usually for clicks or ads on YouTube or whatever it might be. But I think, having been called a grifter a number of times because of the various areas in which I travel, that it is more commonly used right now in a very unuseful and arguably harmful way to suggest that because this person disagrees with me, they must be operating in bad faith for money. And so I would see that used a little bit less, curbed a little bit more, because I think that's a very unhealthy way to interact with people on a sincere basis.
Yeah, it's kind of like how, I mean, the media just takes certain words and just runs with it and squeezes it all meaning.
It's
right?
just trends.
So it's like, yeah. So like, think about, obviously woke, that doesn't mean anything now either, right? I had another word on the tip of my tongue, but I completely forgot. But yes, I completely agree.
Yeah. I don't think I have like a phrase or certain words that bother me when I see a written thing. I guess it's just mostly the context of it and how it's used that's more important to me. I guess you could use, like, if someone used grifter, like, I'd kind of roll my eyes, but it's like, well, if you actually use it properly, I'll be much more happy about that or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with those phrases, is it does have a real meaning.
Yes, it does. And it just loses it over time.
Yeah.
But I remember trends, like I remember in writing and stuff, like, for a while, everyone was saying verticality about something specifically. Everyone was saying biome, I remember.
Oh, yeah. I try to avoid biome for sure. Yeah.
There's certain like words that I remember, like my old coworker, Ben Moore, always hated the word dazzling or dazzle when people would use that. And I always just remember that. And just everyone has like a couple words like that. But I don't think I have any like hard no's yet. I wouldn't say... it's really funny. One time I was writing a review earlier on when I was first starting writing, and I believe I said it was something like Pixar visuals. And Daniel Bloworth, who was my editor at the time, just said, "Don't use that. Everyone always says that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I like never used it again. So it was just funny things to see that maybe I didn't even think about that a lot of people already use, that it's just overplayed like crazy. So that's just something to keep an eye on, I guess.
I didn't think if you read a lot of them, you can pick up on them pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're taking stuff like the Dragon Age reviews, they're probably taking like the final paragraph of the review or something like that, or the opening paragraph, where it's just kind of like the general summing up of stuff. And I could definitely see them using those words like a return to form. I could see that easily happening.
Moment to moment gameplay is another one where it's like you're just describing the seconds of you playing the game.
Yeah,
totally comes down to it. Another word I try to avoid using, but I have no doubt I use a ton, is immersive. I don't, I try to try to find other ways to kind of explain what is immersive about it, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, it's immersive." Like a game should be immersive.
Yeah. All right, boys. That's it. We're done. Another episode in the books. Gene, Hoeg, thank you guys for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Awesome time talking with both of you. Gene, I will see you tomorrow, actually, from when we are recording right now. Because we're doing punching up tomorrow. Remember, it's later tomorrow. So
it is later tomorrow. Yes.
Keep that in mind.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your patience. That I had to dip out for about 20 minutes, and I also had mic problems right when I had to dip out for some reason, which was very like cleanly timed. So
yeah, perfect.
Good to talk to you again, Hoeg. We've been chatting a lot. We just talked a bunch during the Veilguard podcast, so go check that out.
You've had to put up with me a lot.
Yeah, but it's been fun. We've had to interrupt each other quite a bit, so that's
we did our best on this one, folks.
I think we did pretty good. Right, Brad? I don't know.
Yeah, you guys did pretty good. Yeah,
you did pretty good. So
we'll good. Yes.
All you need is me, Jaffe, and Hoeg, all three of us together, and it'll just be a cacophony of nerdy voices just going.
The podcast experience everyone is waiting for.
Yes, that's right. Hoeg, thank you for being here. You've only been on this.
This was fun.
The second time, I think. So
this is the second time on Summon.
We'll have you more in the future. Hoeg, you do other stuff as well besides your day job as an actual professional lawyer. You do a lot of stuff, though. Tell them about it, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, my most recent virtual legality was an analysis of what a purchase of Kadokawa Corporation by Sony might look like, how the pricing would be done, various other things that happened as part of that rumor set. I'm doing virtual legalities all the time. Hangouts and Headlines is the series where we look at reporting on various things not limited to video games and talk about how headlines influence the way we see things, how journalists write articles. I haven't brought up a Gene Park article in Hangouts and Headlines before. So, you're safe there, Gene.
I write all my headlines.
Sometimes I'm pretty positive about the articles, but often I am not. So that's a series on the channel. If any of that interests anybody, Hoeg Law at YouTube, check me out. Otherwise, if you just want to hear me gloating about the Michigan Wolverines once again dispatching the Ohio State Buckeyes, you can catch me on Twitter, where I will probably be talking about that for the next week, at least.
Cool. Great. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. We greatly appreciate it, and we will see you next episode. Take care, everyone. Goodbye. Summon Sign is a product of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is written and hosted by me, Brad Ellis. The show is produced by Dustin Furman. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. Summon Sign, along with the rest of Last Stand's media shows, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we are grateful for your kind contribution and generosity to our independent endeavor. Thank you.